Welcome, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our Q2 meeting plenary. I think this is our sixth virtual plenary now over the last year or so, and hopefully we're getting to the point where we'll have at least a hybrid meeting coming soon. We're looking forward to that. We've got a new format today. Firstly, it's the first time we've opened our plenary to non-members. The view there is we would really like to expose the detailed work of MEF to a larger audience. And we have about double the number of people registered for this event as we typically have for a virtual plenary. So we'll see how many turn out, but we're really encouraged with the interest. And we've also changed the format a little bit. We're trying to make it a little bit more interactive, a little less sort of PowerPoint driven. And so you'll see that reflected in the agenda when I talk about that in a second. So let me just talk about the platform a little bit. We're actually using the BlueJeans platform for the first time. Thanks to the Verizon folks for making that an attractive solution for us and helping us out. We're going to do a couple of polls. One will kick off in a minute, and then we'll close on that poll at break time, and then we'll do another poll thereafter. And you'll be able to see those pop up on your screen once they're turned on. You can do Q&A at any time. That's mainly for the board session, but you can ask presenters through Q&A anytime if you like to. And of course, the chat's available to talk to anybody in the audience at any time throughout the session. About the meeting itself, as is traditional, we have the detailed committee agendas there on the wiki, and they are available. There's also the Zoom links to each of the committee sessions on the wiki. And we're not going through the detailed work plans in the plenary here. We're going to provide more of a summary. We'll have presentations and recordings of the plenary. So you have the recording with the slides, but also you have the slides alone for the opening plenary, also, and as well as the closing plenary. And then you will also be able to see an orientation that we conducted just a short while ago for new participants, new members, etc. It was a 1-hour orientation. If you couldn't make it, you could download that. You can actually point to people in your company to that. Taking a look at the agenda, for the week quickly. We had some editing sessions yesterday. We had the orientation today, as we mentioned, plenary today, editing sessions in the afternoon. And then we move into 4 committee tracks tomorrow. Different start times, different end times. So you really need to look at each individual committee to see what their particular makeup is. And actually, we're bringing a new component in, which is a kind of marketing information session where we'll be presenting a new top-down MEF marketing plan for 21-22, and that'll be presented by Lisa McCausland, our Senior Director of Marketing. So we're looking forward to that. We move back to some of the committees. Most of the committees meeting on Thursday. And then the board is meeting on Friday morning. And to avoid having a conflict with the closing plenary, we push that out a little bit later. So that's happening early afternoon Eastern time on Friday. Now, looking at the agenda for the plenary today, I'm going to, once I'm done here, I'm going to kick off with a conversation with Nan. We're going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes, and we're also going to recognize the editors of some of the recent standards. We got a couple of recorded pieces in here today, and I call it community update, but it's just recognition of things like new members and new certifications and so on. So we'll see how you like that. And as we always do, we have Pascal joining us. Actually, he's pre-recorded, but he's going to deliver the CTO report. We'll take a break. And, one of the objectives we wanted to have was really to bring the board closer to the membership. We have a world-class board, and we felt maybe we should be doing more to, expose them to the membership and have the members ask questions to them. So we have the segment called Ask the Board. It's going to be moderated by Stan Hubbard. And, just basically questions from the audience, very informal. So it's your opportunity to talk to the board directly. And, replacing the more detailed committee overviews, the detailed work overviews, we're going to try a kind of a roundtable format where one of the staff members is going to host the chairs. We're going to talk about what the committee does and, what are the key work items? What are the main things going on this week? And then, the thinking is, of course, you can just drill into I'm getting some feedback, by the way. Somebody's got some noise going. Just a heads up, production team. You'll be able to drill into the particular committee agendas, as I mentioned on the wiki. And then I'm going to close with some upcoming events, just announcements of upcoming things. Now, again, bear with us. It is a new format, new production, new platform. We might have a hiccup or two. And we might, our timing might be off by a few minutes here and there. So we expect to finish around 12:45, and that might move to about 1 o'clock Eastern time. So with that, I'd like to get started and have I'd like to bring Nan in and have a discussion with Nan.
Thanks, Kevin.
There you are in your usual casual California attire.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day out here, so might as well.
And you're always up bright and early anyway, so you're ready to go, right?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. We're running 6 miles.
Oh, good. Okay. Hey, listen, it's it's the MEF 20th year in business this year, and I know you know that. I'm not sure everybody knows that, but we were founded in 2001, just a few months from now, and so we're going to kind of look back and forward a bit on MEF in the past and MEF looking forward. But when you and others founded the MEF 20 years ago, would you have ever believed that it would be still in existence or relevant, 20 years later?
Yeah, it's hard to believe if you think back how revolutionary that was, transformative that was. Think of the time when the Ethernet was not even in the business of carriers. It's all enterprise technology, and the entire transport systems for carriers are dominated by SONET SDH, like 99.9999%. So now you're thinking back, my goodness, we right now I don't think a lot of people on this call can spell SONET. So my point is it really incredible to think about how the whole thing transformed, through our effort, obviously, work of our members. But it's a really unbelievable. But then again, the funny thing is, back then when we first started, I guess we have a singular belief that that's actually going to happen. We're naive or stupid or crazy enough to think it's actually going to happen. We basically just focusing on that goal and work together to make it happen. It's very believable. At that time, we felt it was real. We felt it's going to work. But you think back, it was pretty crazy.
And what do you think? But just actually coming back to the 20 years, I remember probably one of the first board meetings I was ever at. Bob Klesick, I don't know if Bob's on here today, but there was a discussion about, how much more work do we have to do in Ethernet? I remember Bob saying, well, I think once we get through whatever it was, 6.6 and 10 and a couple of these and a couple of those, I think we'll be pretty much done. And maybe we can start giving that. We have collected extra membership money. We'll be giving it back because we won't need to exist. This is like 2006 or something, and here we are like 15 years later with 100 and some odd standards, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But Nan, we have a lot of discussions today about what our focus needs to be and kind of critical success factors for success. But if you look back, at that point in time, wherever it was, at the point at which MEF saw that inflection point. What do you think, like the biggest factor was, the critical success factor to launching this thing at the time?
To me, through my career, I've learned the most important thing is people. I think if people has been able to navigate through the challenges, potentially be presented to any organizations. And in MEF's case, at the time, it was an incredible group of people, came from all walks of life from our industry to be able to navigate the the difficulties early on. So, for example, one of the key, I think, decision the board and the leadership team made was to focusing on services versus the technology itself. And I think that's still ring true today. But at that time, it was because the fact that there's Ethernet over SONET, which is a big contingent of people who believe that Ethernet need to be carried over SONET. And then there's a huge amount of people also believe that Ethernet needs to be on Ethernet, just because the fact that SONET not going to have enough bandwidth to carry the Ethernet. It was becoming somewhat religious and really threatened to break MEF in two. And I think the board made a decision, and then with the people like Bob and others and Rolf, and to be able to say, hey, listen, let's focusing on what is actually get delivered. One of the famous saying, I can't remember what it was, maybe it was from Bob, saying about doesn't matter what vehicle to carry that services. It could be Ethernet, could be SONET, could be supersonic pigeon. And so long you deliver Ethernet services, then it's good. I think that was a really key decision the people leadership team made. The second biggest decision I think we made it was about certification. And it was really, at that time, it was also pretty naive, or in a sense of it doesn't exist in industry, that service provider would allow you to come in to certify network. Not only the functionality, but the performance, it's almost unheard of. So, or I should say unheard of. And then we actually made that happen. I think that's a really kickstart the whole hyper growth of.
And I remember you saying before my time that you were pushing people, you got to get a standard out there, put a stake in the ground by starting to deliver a single standard to the industry to be built on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was is a totally important in terms of unify industry into one, so that you can deliver for two things. One is the service itself to be able to deliver, so people can buy. When they say Ethernet services, they know what that means, because at that time there's some small players, some large players, and deliver Ethernet services, but they're all different. So it's a kind of confused market, and it's really important to have a single definition, to allow the end user who buying those services to be able to say, okay, this is what I want, and here's the Ethernet services, and has a guarantee and back of the MEF from not only standard perspective, but also certification perspective. And to be frank, it was kind of synchronized the language, if you would, terminology of the industry. People, when they say Ethernet services, it means so many different things, and I think MEF did a really good job to make that part of the vocabulary of our industry.
I just finished hosting a panel about half an hour ago with a bunch of senior executives in a Middle Eastern event, most of which are MEF members, and they know us well. And it was around automation, and the whole focus was it's all about services, automation of services, right? And if you think about how the infrastructure has evolved and virtualized and so on over so many years, how strategic could that have been to say we're going to rise above, we're going to abstract ourselves from that infrastructure and look where it's positioned us today, right? That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, the whole point is about services is we are a very unique industry where we develop standards not for the standards' sake. I'm not criticizing any other standards bodies, but we uniquely deliver services that's actually revenue generating, right? So the standards for revenue generating, that's a huge, I think, is a huge differentiator, but also a difference maker for our industry.
Right. So I know you're a big fan. Obviously, MEF had a singular focus for a long time, and carrier Ethernet, and that expanded to orchestration of carrier Ethernet, and then moving into services like SD-WAN. And now you're seeing, obviously, the evolution of our work portfolio is growing. Our automation initiatives are reaching to the cloud. They're reaching to enterprise. We're in the security space. It's been a logical progression, and it all makes sense end to end. But how do you see What do you see as being like a really important focus for MEF moving forward, so we don't become kind of diluted into too many directions? I know you're a fan of having a smaller number of very singular, focused areas. And
yeah, I think I think industry as of today is a lot different than when we started MEF, because the fact that things are moving a lot faster, and there are a lot of technologies, a lot of the standards, a lot of directions that people are pushing for. I think I would say it's hard to judge sometimes, but I think the guiding principle or objective should be the best what we do, which make a difference. Help our member grow. I think that's a key. If we're not number one in that particular standards or particular area, and then we're not making a difference for our members, we should get out. And I think the key here really is, whether or not it's a automation APIs or the DLTs or end-to-end slicing or SD-WAN or security. I think whatever we do, we believe we are doing the right thing. But I think that we should continue to evaluate what we're doing and to be able to say, hey, we're actually making a difference for our industry. Listen, I think that we actually do make a difference. And if a pandemic taught us anything, we realize how important not only our works has been, but also this group of members, really creating or building, for lack of better words, a parallel universe to allow people to be connected. Imagine one day, last year we said, every member said, well, we're going to shut down our network. We're not going to do anymore. Just imagine that what the world is like. I always use that as a judgment. If you disappear tomorrow, do the people care? Do people actually realize that actually you existed before? I'm not saying that you have to be relevant, but I'm saying, we'll be here trying to make a difference. I think, the pandemic really taught us, what actually matters. So that's great.
So, all right, so we're 20 years into it. What do you see us? I want to ask you to tell us where you think we're going to be in 20 years. That's a bit of a stretch. I'm sure I'm not going to be here in 20 years, so it's not going to matter to me. But what about 5 years out? What do you think? What are we going to look like 5 years out?
As we start to hone in the core of MEF, I think we have stated in the past, but mainly we really want to do building a global federation of technology, communications, and cloud providers that enable automatic delivery of dynamic, trusted, certified services at everyone's fingertips. It could be potentially across the globe. With a collective button, you'll be able to deliver that services to everybody. That including enterprise, potentially including consumers, and all around to create the values which doesn't exist before, really helping our members to grow. I really do see that's actually is a goal and a vision. I know it's hard to imagine from here onwards, but the truth is that given our past and our history we have done, I really fully confident that we can do that. And I think it's really important to believe in what we do and to actually grinding on it, and eventually you will get where we want to go. One thing through my career, both from MEF and then also my other day job, is that only the kind of the crazy people, kind of crazy enough to think they can change the world, and eventually will do. And I think if it's anything, I think want to be good, want to be working hard, want to be crazy. Think that we can change the world, and then eventually we will.
Oh, awesome, man. That's great. So listen, I think one of the challenges and objectives we've had over the last number of years is to try to strike the balance between continuing to be a member-driven organization where the ideas can percolate up and obviously create works that turn into standards and other things, but at the same time have a really strong leadership team with our board and our committee leaders and a technical strategy. And so a little bit later, we're going to hear from the board. But what I'd like to do now is ask some of the editors that have recently completed their standards to join us, because we'd like to honor them as we typically do. Sometimes it's one at a time at our quarterly meetings. We're going to do it all at once. So Simi and Mehmet, Andrea, and Isabel, if you could also join as well with your video and your audio.
Hey guys.
Okay. All right. There you are. Yeah. So we've seen, over recent quarters, really kind of substantial volumes of new standards being produced by MEF, and of course, looking at being here 20 years later, it's ultimately it has boiled down to the huge contributions from the volunteers, and so quite a few people on the list here have been around for almost 20 years, if not 20 years. So it's great to see this whole team. So I've got starting with the lowest numbered spec, Simi Babar, who was the editor of 23.2.2, and I'm going to come back to her in a second. Raghu with 47.1, Mehmet with 55.1, Andrea with 72.1, and Isabel with 91. Simi, you're with Intelsat, and you produced 23.2.2. You want to just tell us about it for 30 seconds to let the world here know the significance of the new standard?
Yeah, sure. So the 23.2.2 defines the performance objectives for a new tier, PT5, that's specifically geared towards geosynchronous satellite providers. The PTs prior to PT5, because they were based on distance and propagation delay, geosynchronous satellite services weren't able to meet those objectives. So it's great that we have this new amendment, and we'll be able to provide and offer standardized carrier Ethernet services.
Now you got to go get certified, right?
That's the next step, yes.
And you're going to see a few minutes from now, you've got 2 LEO players that just joined the forum as well. So the satellite space is sort of heating up. Satellite space, pardon the pun there, is heating up.
That's great.
I should mention that Steve Haddock can't join us, and he was also a co-editor of 23.2.2. Raghu, Nan was stealing your supersonic pigeon expression there a little bit, but I'm sure you have no pride of authorship on that. So tell us about 47.1, and great to see you again.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So this 47.1 was a revision of 47 that was published maybe 5-6 years ago. And this spec defines elastic Ethernet services as a general class using a lot of the attributes that we have defined in the MEF 10.4 and 26.2 specifications that people might be aware of. And we have not only defined the general class of Ethernet, elastic Ethernet services, but we've also specified a set of elastic Ethernet services for cloud connectivity as a special class of that general class. And for both, compared to the original MEF 47, we defined additional attributes and boatload of constraints, as reflected by the fact that, as Bob Klesick likes to point out, we have almost 7 times more requirements than compared to what 47. So it's a very, very broad set of work, and a lot of collaboration from Bell Canada, Basil, Jason Wolf. Bob Klesick helped a lot with some of the editing and guiding of the work. David Ball from Cisco, John Sivko from AT&T. So it was a very, very, very well developed work, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. Should make a point here of saying Raghu and Mehmet are, and Steve, who's not here, are distinguished fellows as well. So we have distinguished presence here today. Mehmet, do you want to tell us about 55.1?
Yes, thank you. As you know, we have published MEF 55 in March 2016, and which is called the LSO Architecture and Framework Document, standards actually. And at that time, the intent was to address the connectivity service. And as you all know, we have been working on the cloud service architectures for quite some time, actually really since 2014. So it became very clear that we need to update the document so that we can include cloud service. So in other words, the really intent is to enable automation and control of connectivity and the cloud service. And by doing that, we basically have taken what we had, but we also took advantage of the ETSI NFV architecture so that we can address virtualized component, but also the legacy component that we already have in the MEF 55. So our hope is this LSO architecture framework 55.1 will be very useful for us in addressing the MAC services, addressing the network slicing services that we have been working on, and hopefully again LSO architecture document 55.1 will be based for them to address the orchestration and management of these services. In the development of 55.1, I would like to thank David Ball from Cisco, David Martin from Nokia, Sibel Scheller from NEC, and as well as Joanna Mayer from Mayer Consulting. They have contributed quite a bit. Without their help, I think this document would have not been there. I want to thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Great, Mehmet. Thanks. And Andrea, sometimes resource models and things like that aren't the sexiest thing to get out there, but they're necessary parts of what we do. Maybe you want to just quickly tell us about 72.1.
Right. 72.1 comes as an extension of 72 regarding the management at Presto side of the layer 1 connectivity service. And the work is based on MEF-63 and 64 by my colleague Dave Martin. And I would underline that the MEF-72 is adding the ENI modeling at Presto level, which is something that it is pretty important in the view of the multi-domain orchestration. So now we have at Presto side a model for the management of the connectivity service at layer 1. I would like to thank you, Min Yon of Tata Communication, Dave Alabao of Fujitsu Network Communication, my colleague Dave Martin, and last but not least, Karthik for the continued support in this activity. Thank you.
Andrea. Thank you. And we're going to wrap up with Isabel.
Yes. So MEF 91 is a standard that has been developed specifically for MEF 3.0 certification. So it covers 3 subscriber services, the E-Line, E-LAN, E3 services, and 2 operator services, the E-Access and the Transit, E-Transit, or Transit E-Line and Access E-Line services. This is a standard that specifies test requirements, so it's very useful for service providers or equipment vendors that are preparing to have their products certified or their services certified to consult. It provides tables of requirements, lists of requirements associated with each of the attributes that compose the various services. So this is MEF 91.
Well, I should point out to Simi, we're doing 91.0.1 right now, which is to add the performance tier in the certification test requirements. So now you have no excuse whatsoever to get certified.
That's true.
Well, with that, listen, on behalf of Nan and the board, thank you for all your hard work and keep it going. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. And now we're going to move to a little recorded announcement piece. Okay, so now we have a few announcements and updates before we move on to the CTO report. Let me first, once again, congratulate our editors who do an amazing job. They take these projects from incubation through to letter ballot and board approval. We appreciate your efforts, and we look forward to many new standards releases in the next quarter. Time to move on to announce our new members. Firstly, we have Lanner. They're a Taiwan-based developer of white box solutions for network communications, security, and software-defined networking. Lanner joined MEF to accelerate the development of white box solutions for SD-WAN, Open RAN, MEC, and SASE. We have OneWeb, based in the UK. They'll provide a space-based LEO network in Q4 of this year to deliver fiber-like connectivity anywhere in the world. They joined MEF to initially leverage MEF 3.0 Carrier Ethernet certification and to explore MEF LSO Sonata API interoperability. SD-WAN Solutions is also based in the UK. They're a provider of multi-vendor SD-WAN and security services to over 190 countries around the world. And SD-WAN Solutions joined MEF to help accelerate the diffusion of SD-WAN and SASE standards in the service provider and enterprise communities. ServiceNow, they are a US-based workflow platform creating great experiences that unlock productivity. They joined MEF to leverage MEF LSO APIs to increase the scale and scope of interoperability of their platform. Telesat, also a LEO-based player, they have a product called Lightspeed, which will offer fiber speed and latency anywhere on Earth. They will be MEF 3.0 certified to meet the rigorous advanced connectivity services of service providers and enterprises. And so let's move on to certification. Since the beginning of the year, we have close to 20 new certifications. They include companies being certified for the first time, as well as those that are certifying incremental products and services. Congratulations for your efforts, and we look forward to helping you leverage this investment and accomplishment. So there you see the full family of MEF 3.0 certified companies, and we look forward to this chart being even busier. Looking at MEF professional certification, we now have over 8,000 certifications in 85 countries and 437 organizations. Of course, our flagship products are MEF-CECP, MEF-SNCP, and MEF-SD-CP. And we're seeing great traction with the MEF Network Expert program. MEF industry professionals who persevere to earn 2 active certifications are awarded the MEF Network Expert designation. As a reminder, we've recently introduced the no-charge self-service portal, currently supporting MEF SD-CP. You can use the portal to self-study for the SD-CP exam or to prepare for formal training if you need it. We also introduced the corporate program, which offers volume-based financial incentives, also facilitates corporate certification, success metrics and tracking for the companies buying into the program. Back in February, we broadcast 7 live proof of concept showcases. Amazing representation of the impact that MEF's work is having in the industry. That content is now available on demand. You can see it there at mef.net/POC. Don't miss it. We also conducted Poc Awards, and you can see here the 5 teams that won this year's awards. We look forward to the future competitions. Last but not least, we completed episode 4 of the MEF Infinite Edge series with great speakers, engaging content, and some very entertaining hosts. That content is also available on demand. So with that, I look forward to communicating many new accomplishments in the quarter ahead. Whoever was doing that voiceover sounded kind of familiar. But, so listen, we're going to move next to hear from Pascal. No MEF meeting would be complete without the message from our brilliant CTO, Pascal Meneses.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our all members meeting, end of April 2021. Well, I'm really looking forward to getting together in person in July, hopefully, of this year. But for now, let's just get going on a CTO update on what are we doing and our status update on how we're progressing. A lot of great stuff happening, so let me just share the screen on the things we're doing. So number one, I want to thank everybody who has really worked on all the projects we've been working on in MEF. I really feel that we're doing a really great job and we're really becoming impactful. So let's just start with what's happening in the industry As you know, digital transformation is a massive, massive tidal wave. 11 trillion is really underestimating. It's massive in nature, transforming the planet as we know it. But below this digital transformation is network transformation. It's the impetus, it's the really foundational layer to enable the digital economy. And I believe what MEF is working on is specifically addressing exactly how networks have to transform to support this digital transformation. On our lifecycle service orchestration automation, I will cover more around the APIs, specifically around the underlay area, and certainly the edge also for Cantata. But let me just go into, I think, where we are with our APIs. We are a MEF-55 framework. It was developed 5+ years ago, I believe. Still really very relevant. We updated to 55.1 that adds in the NFV Mano. But really what we're finding out is, while this reference model of truly automation end-to-end across the ecosystem is very powerful, we've really been focusing on two major areas. We certainly have legato work going, interlude work for use case requirements. We've done some Presto work in the past, but we're really, really focused now on this east-west direction at the business commercial layer. And I think this is very, very important. And I'll get into exactly the areas we're doing here and why this is so important. It is really important because before you can get to the operational layers down here below, I really believe that the commercial layer has to be the prerequisites to the automation at the lower operational layers. So while we have the ability to do operational APIs at Interlude and Allegro and Presto and so on, and certainly Legato BSS2 Lifecycle Service Orchestrator, it's this business system to business system that's certainly becoming the hotspot of where the industry is really looking at for standardization and interoperability. It's this idea that two operators who are working together in some ecosystem have to collaborate. They really want to figure out from the business systems how to make that happen. And as you know, business systems are not generally very agile. And to make them agile, really to be a DevOps model and to be able to change things with weeks is very difficult and challenging, especially in the business systems. And certainly we can do it in the networks, we can do it in other areas, but the business systems are very mission critical and generally take a little longer on any changes. Certainly we're seeing that also facing the enterprise. More and more multinational enterprises are caring about the ability to have automated APIs, not have a whole bunch of portals from different providers or different cloud providers. They really want a set of industry open APIs, both at the commercial level and at the operational level. So I'll cover that in more detail. So let me go into really the specifics around the 4 pillars. What I really believe is what MEF is working on network transformation. Number 1 is this very high-speed underlay, and I'll go in much detail on this, that is not being worked on at the underlay layer of carrier Ethernet IP anymore, service definitions, but really about this automation, orchestration, and federation on making this underlay very powerful, and I'll go into the details, across all the carriers worldwide and enabling them to be able to turn up services at cloud-like speeds. The second area that's very powerful is obviously our SD-WAN overlay model. Overlays on top of underlays have been talked about a lot, and we are certainly doing a lot in this area. And then finally, adding digital services on that overlay is very powerful. And here we are doing a lot of work on security, managed security services. I'll go in detail. And finally, the nascent area that we really are embarking on is edge services. And I'll talk a lot about at 5G, edge-to-edge slicing, and how I see the automation APIs playing there. So let's just get started in each of these areas. And I've got about 10 minutes, so I'll have to really move fast. But I welcome a lot of feedback, and certainly membership is extremely valuable for all your contributions you've done to date in this area of network transformation for the digital economy. So first, let's talk about what's going on in this underlay, this high-speed fabric. As you know, we've been doing a ton of work, 4+ years, in automating this ecosystem at the commercial business layers I talked about. Certainly, they're already connected to the data plane layer, and for 15+ years, MEF was focused on interconnecting this ecosystem at very high speeds, at 1 gigabit, 10 gigabit today, 400 gigabits, 800 gigabits emerging, 1 terabits. They'll continue to evolve at very, very high speeds. And MEF has been the sole authority to drive that Ethernet high-speed layer. Certainly on top of that, IP is very predominant. And we did a lot of work, and we're continuing doing a lot of work in enabling that from an automation level. But what's really happening is, in the Sonata APIs, is tying in this ecosystem in a federated level between all the service providers that are already interconnected at the data plane level to now tie in their business systems so they're fully automated and federated. And the ability to then turn up any service from one part of the globe through the federation of ecosystem of partners to another part of the globe, whatever that service might be. Today, it's connectivity oriented to get to the last mile, whether it be carry Ethernet or IP broadband, DIA or IP MPLS, or the emerging fixed wireless access of 5G. The key point is to do that at the commercial business layer, to be able to check an address anywhere from the partnership of the federation, find out what's available of services, get a price quote, then be able to order it, and then from there to be able to bill on it, have trouble ticketing. Catalog will become very important. We'll talk about that. And then also additionally, we've done also brilliant work in not only enabling APIs in this east-west direction, but distributed ledger technologies of blockchain is coming in very fast. And we are really doing a tremendous amount of work with our membership on enabling other more evolved use cases that are not very API, they're more kind of blockchain oriented and versus API oriented. And these use cases are around smart contract, digital settlement, and so on. So all at the commercial level to enable this idea of business systems to talk first before the operational layer takes over. So this is really, really great work. And what we're seeing is with the edge coming in, the edge really can't use a backbone internet to go from one edge to the other edge. It really needs this high-speed fabric that is 10 to hundreds of gigabits of capacity to tie in all the customers worldwide on a managed backbone. We're seeing this today from many, many providers tying into the cloud providers, hyperscale cloud providers, having a direct connection to them versus using the internet. And we're seeing the need tying in all the edges worldwide from various providers worldwide to have this very comprehensive federated backbone, this very high speed capacity, and all interconnected by all the partners worldwide. And it's really taking all the assets they have today and all of that communication fabric they've put in place for decades and now making it fully automated. So at cloud-like speeds, anything can be turned up at almost near real time. The other area obviously is that will go up the stack is SD-WAN. I don't need to say much more, but we've been doing a tremendous amount of work. Kudos to everyone in this area, especially the committees, all the co-chairs, all the contributors. Great area in our SD-WAN service specification. We launched version 1, I think last year or a year before, I can't remember, maybe MEF 19 in 2019, but really great job. And now version 2 is just a stellar spec, really focused on really the functionality of traffic steering and performance around traffic steering. So really great work, and also underlays. The Universal SD-WAN project has got some really great legs. It is really about the edge, and the ability to support that the ubiquitous amount of vendors coming out with all kinds of SD-WAN vendors coming out of the woodworks. How will they all plug into the edge when you don't want to support 50 or 100 different vendor types? And so the Universal SD-WAN edge is about interop at the data plane, control plane, telemetry plane, and I think there's still a lot of discussions on how the managed plane will work. So very, very good work. It'll also allow all the SaaS providers and different providers to plug in. Finally, at security level, really great work in this area. As you know, SASE is a huge area. It continues to be a massive area for many people. So really, really kudos to this, to all the people working on this project. We also have app protection. We started a couple years ago. That's got a version 1 coming out in tandem with 70.1. And I won't get into the details of that, but it really talks about the security functions and how to apply them in an SDN policy context. We have SASE, as I talked about. Zero Trust is another companion that will work very much with SASE. Really great work. Hope to standardize them soon and then get all kinds of certification services around that. XDR is really important. This idea of expanded detection response is really, really critical. and extended actually detection response, and really the ability to be able to have telemetry data from the SDN world, the SASE world, and the Zero Trust world plug into a data lake that then has AI in it and then has AI ops capabilities, very critical. We also have in our Zero Trust project, tying in the application of identity and access control to the network layer through an API. And so the project is looking at the attributes that could go in the data model on this API as part of the project. So I won't spend a lot of energy on this because we're running out of time, but join the project and really get involved. Really great ideas of how to tie the application of identity access control to the network layer. So at the edge, this is a really great nascent area that we are embarking on. So let me just get in some of these details. Number one, we have this lean NFV project, which is really the goal is how do we take really the Mano aspect currently as we know it today and decompose it into like a microservices architecture you see on the right, where you have lifecycle service management of these CNFs and VNFs all done through these microservices or these microcontrollers. And they're all like working through an open API called the Adagio API into key value store. And then from the key value store, there's a Presto API that links up to the whole SOF of the LSO framework. So I really encourage you, because I really don't want to spend a lot of time running out of time, to really look at this project and see if there's interest and talk to these project editors. We're doing a ton of work, also taking our Sonata work and basically moving that into the last mile scenarios, where specifically for SD-WAN, many providers are now tasked with not only managing the overlays, but the underlays. And because of that, they don't own underlays worldwide. They have to work with underlay operators, and specifically IP broadband DIA is the big use case coming in. With that, basically taking the same Sonata APIs and just basically putting in new payload types for IP broadband DIA would be the goal. And there is already work in this area, so I encourage you to get involved with that. The other area at the edge is the ability to provide this Sonata-looking view, but to the enterprise for a buy-only model. And again, commercial plays a very critical role first before we can enable the edge. How can an enterprise understand what they want to buy from specific locations, what's available, whether that be bandwidth today or SD-WAN or SASE, but it also could be edge compute. So we have to be thinking about payloads for edge compute and how that will look like. And then not only do we want to be able to have the commercialization aspects, but then also we need operational APIs, which today we've not really done a lot of work in. The lifecycle ability for a developer to then finally, when they've bought their infrastructure of the edge, to load in their bits and then figure out if it's working right and the compute's working right, and then be able to change the elasticity of their compute environments or their bandwidth and so on. And then maybe application providers want to call in the edge for APIs, platform as a service, or serverless computing, or function as a service, are all emerging. And these are all the operational aspects once someone buys this service. So really great work on Cantata that's evolving very fast to not only the commercial area, but we have to address the operational layer. And really, there's a lot of other SDOs doing work in that area that maybe we can leverage. So I'm looking at that myself personally, and then like to work with the LSO committee on how we can look at this problem of the operational layer, both at Sonata and Cantata, leverage other SDOs, and not have to reinvent the wheel. Private 5G is coming in everywhere, and really at the bottom line is Wi-Fi is not cutting it for some mission critical applications, specifically at industrial manufacturing, real-time kinds of processes, robots, and assembly lines. Basically at factories, there's all kinds of IoT instrumentation that has to be deterministic in nature. Really having a private 5G that has deterministic capabilities is really powerful and emerging fast. And in private 5G, obviously 5G in general, slicing plays a very critical role, and the ability to have performance objectives basically tied to this slice is very powerful. And then how can this slice that's in the enterprise be able to be used end-to-end is really what the next project is about. And here we see this idea of our end-to-end slicing project. We not only have a whole framework around end-to-end slicing, but also now we're defining end-to-end slicing profiles themselves, and how can they be used as an underlay for SD-WAN to be able to use them. And in the POCs, if you go look at them, there are really great use cases of end-to-end slicing and SD-WAN. And then basically this acts as an abstraction layer so that really it doesn't matter where at the enterprise you have a 5G set of slices in the enterprise, but then they continue the slice on end-to-end slice regardless of what the underlay looks like. If it's carry Ethernet or IP MPLS, or regardless, it continues. And really the use case is very powerful if you look at some of the POCs. Really at the end of the day, SD-WAN edges can be put at sites, and the end-to-end slice goes from right from the device at the enterprise, right throughout the whole service provider ecosystem, their footprint of their partners to clouds, and then basically SD-WAN edge devices can either offload non-mission critical traffic right there and then at the edge of sites, or it can also or use the internet as backup paths, or it can then place mission critical applications, classify them, and make sure they run right on underlays, these end-to-end slices, and only put the mission critical applications. So look at some of these use cases in these POCs. They're really brilliant in showing how end-to-end slicing and SD-WAN works together, and what is end-to-end slicing and the meaning of that. Finally, in the home stretch, there's a really great opportunity for SD Home, SD Branch, SD-LAN. Let me just describe that. More and more enterprises want a frictionless environment from their devices to their digital services wherever they live. And that could be public clouds, private clouds, inside the service providers' offerings also. And really, they're now looking at managed offerings coming into their LAN, into their branches, in their home by these service providers that are already owning and delivering SD-WAN to go further into their enterprise, into their homes, into their offices, and manage not only the Wi-Fi or the wireless assets, and also apply the slicing, but also there's a big concern of IoT devices showing up at these enterprises, at these homes, at these sites, branches, and they become truly a cybersecurity vulnerability and having postures. Now, in SD-WAN Edge, our 7.1 has these idea of zones. How could we fingerprint some of these devices as a version 1 of this area and automatically put them in the right zone and then have the right security postures, and then also the ability to put different devices in the right slice at the enterprise is maybe another opportunity, and make sure that wireless infrastructure is working right, especially private 5G, and certainly even maybe the ability to put slicing on Wi-Fi, and that's Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. So great opportunities here. The ability to have a frictionless environment end-to-end is truly the vision, and really the ability to us to embark on that is really a powerful story. For sure, we don't have anything in this area, but I am truly incubating this myself, and I'd love to work with membership to how we can figure out the lowest hanging fruit, the version 1, the minimal viable product to go address something in this area. So stay tuned. With that, I want to thank you for your time and have a great virtual members meeting.
Great stuff, Pascal. Thank you very much. A lot of content crammed into a short period of time, but it gives a nice big picture view of how all these pieces come together. And so after the break, we'll see that, obviously we're getting into the committee work that's underpinning and enabling all those big picture solutions to happen. So we're actually going to take a break now. Okay, we are back. Hope you enjoyed the first part of the show, if we call it a show. So we had a lot of people respond to the poll. I think we had close to 100 people responding. I think the results are kind of, you can see that you can look at the results yourselves, but Tom has just closed the poll, and about 50% said that the main reason they're here is to contribute to or keep up with standards development. So I need to emphasize the contribute to versus the keep up to. The keep up to is nice, but contribute to is most important, because with the scope of work, as you saw with Pascal's presentation, there's so much work to be done, and we need members really stepping up as they have. And of course, close to 30% here because they want to hear from board members and leadership. So thank you for participating. Before we get going on with the next segment, Tom, can you fire up the next poll? Okay, so this is a COVID-related question. If MEF hosts a hybrid annual meeting, which we're thinking of doing in July, will you consider attending in person? Absolutely. Yes, if the COVID situation continues to improve. Unlikely, because my company is unlikely to approve my travel, or definitely not. I prefer to participate in MEF meetings virtually. So That'll be open till the end of the session today, and appreciate you participating. The information is valuable to us. So now we're going to move on to the Ask the Board segment, and we have quite a number of the directors attending today. Not all of them could make it. Some of them might be coming a little bit late. Some of them might be leaving a little bit early. That's okay. Stan Hubbard's going to be moderating it. Stan's got a few questions he's already got prepared, but we're most interested in getting questions from the members. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stan to take over this session for about 45 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Can you see me here? I know I can see Frank.
We can see you, Stan, yes.
You can? Okay. So yes, we have a great lineup of board members. So if everybody could turn on the video and audio. We have our chair, Amir Hussain from Verizon. We have our president, Nan Chen from Ericsson, Frank Morales, Orange Business Services, Andrew Dugan from Lumen, Daniele Mancuso from Sparkle, Mirko Voltolini from Colt, Sean Hackle from Microsoft, and Ralph Santatoro from Fujitsu. Welcome, gentlemen. Maybe if you just make sure you're unmuted.
Hi, Stan. Yeah.
Excellent. So I want to get us started off right here with a question. What do you believe are the most important trends shaping the communications landscape that are relevant to the work of MEF? Think about things like work from anywhere, digital business acceleration, security, distributed cloud, 5G, etc. Amir, you want to take us? You want to lead us off with this, and perhaps some others can chime in?
Absolutely, Stan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with the rest of the membership. Really glad to be here. And it's actually a very valuable question, right? We are living in times where things are changing, and I always, try to skate to where the puck is going to be. And based on what's happening right now, I see, few emerging trends. One, there's this notion of secure networking, right? Networking at the edge. Some people call it, Gartner calls it SASE, but that's the next evolution to SD-WAN that's happening, and I see that really taking a key part of where we need to go as operators to support our customers. Second, 5G proliferation, right? With device proliferation, with things like mobile edge compute, we've got now more capabilities than we did maybe 5 years ago, where we can really provide a great mobility, security, reliable experience with the assets that have been built over time and will be built with more spectrum that's being purchased in the market. So tremendous amount of opportunity for MEF to partner and provide a holistic experience, because remember, at the end of every wireless connection, there's a wireline connection. So when things like network slicing and other things that will be overlaid, the customer is going to want to get sustainable end-to-end experience, not just on the RF layer, but all the way to their data center, to their applications, and its application to their business. The third trend is also device proliferation. I mean, we are seeing more mobile devices out there now than we did a few years ago, and this number is about to multiply. We are going through a refresh cycle with 5G and with the applications that we are building with our partnership with large providers, hyperscalers. We're going to need that device ecosystem to grow, whether it's a sensor that needs 5G connectivity, whether it's a device that's aggregating traffic, whether it's our devices that we use for our day-to-day communications. That will grow, and it will open up a lot more opportunity. And then finally, processing of data at the edge, because we've talked about AI ML for the longest time, but now we have an opportunity to look at this trend, and it's being adopted by lots of customers in the industry, especially across healthcare, manufacturing. This is being used as a true lever to really harness the power of fourth industrial revolution. So tremendous amount of work going on in this space. I see that to be a huge area. And I like what Pascal presented, because all the opportunities that MEC is working on will help us realize some of the opportunities that gets created through this trend.
Great. Thank you very much, Amir. Someone else want to take that question? Andrew?
Yes, Dan, this is Andrew. Yeah, agree with all those applications that Amir talked about. Pretty exciting times for us right now in terms of how the industry is evolving. You know, one of the overriding trends that I think is going to be really important is the change in the way that customers are consuming services. They're expecting a much more digital experience. You know, gone are the days of customers willing to wait normal intervals, what we would, old telecom people would consider normal intervals for activating service. Not going to wait 30, 60, 90 days to turn things up. You know, the cloud has conditioned our customers that they need and want instant gratification. So being able to automate networks, being able to have interoperable services are going to become increasingly important. And, you know, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the work that MEF is doing, is enabling that automation through APIs and standardized definition of services. So I think that's probably one of the more transformative things that I think we're going to see really catch on in the industry is around that instant activation.
And I guess the challenge that you have on the service provider side is how do you deal with that from a billing point of view? You know, on-demand services, and so that's one of the reasons why we have such a focus on the commercial aspects. But anyone else want to chime in here?
Yeah, so Stan,
maybe for a second.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
We need to raise.
I was just going to say from a hyperscaler perspective, right? There's basically you're connecting users to apps, as Amir pointed out, right? And as Andrew pointed out, they've got to be as simple and as fast as possible. And we've shown over and over again that the ability to deliver a secure, resilient experience is best when it's network native. That then the work that the MEF is doing to make that consistent across operators just basically engages more and more of the developer community. And so essentially the work that the MEF does by creating consistency and creating interoperability between operators reflects in a basically value stream that can be created off the network, which is offering a simpler, more secure, more resilient experience upwards to the developer community, which will encourage them to build more stuff that relies on that network capability. And of course, when it's network native and going straight from the network to the cloud with no sort of intermediary layer, it'll also be the most cost-effective option. So really, this is about the opportunity to monetize all the investment that's going into 5G and SDN and fiber that's out there right now, and really gives the opportunity to, one, you know, from our perspective, accelerate the growth of the overall ecosystem. In other words, just drive adoption, which is super important. And then from the operator side of the house, it just makes them an integral part of providing that value and lets people monetize off the capabilities they're spending a bunch of money to implement.
Yeah, well said,
I think
Sean.
Stan, yes, and Stan, just to add to that. So I know, you know, as you saw in Pascal's slides, you know, the MEF started focusing on connectivity services, and we're kind of doing, you know, we did overlay with SD-WAN and moving to digital services with cybersecurity. And just to tie back in your earlier point about working from home, working from anywhere, a couple of things that happened during the pandemic were obviously many people who were fortunate to keep their jobs work from home. So now that changed the whole dynamics of increasing your perimeter of your network. So now you're exposed to all kinds of threats that could be introduced from your, you know, BYOD devices. You know, you're not using corporate assets, you're not on the corporate network. And so now there's lots of entry points. And so cybersecurity is going to play a huge role. And we've started tackling cybersecurity with MEF W88 first, with the application flow security standard, which will be, you know, published later this year. And then we have the zero trust work, which basically provides the full end-to-end framework of how to secure networks from not only working from home, but working from anywhere. And even as the pandemic, we eventually get past this at some point in the future, hopefully sooner than later, cybersecurity is going to play an even more important role, not only because there were people working from home during the pandemic, but, you know, you've probably seen studies where a majority of employers will allow their employees to work remotely, which now can, you know, so that security posture, or let's say lack thereof, is now that much more critical. in delivering services. And so now you've heard about things about ransomware and injecting things into the network, but that's forced enterprises to move their digital transformation plans much more quickly to the forefront, as opposed to waiting a couple of years to do that. So more applications are moved to the cloud. You see fewer and fewer applications over time will be residing in a private data center. They'll be running in a cloud environment, virtual private cloud, or moving the apps to a public cloud environment, SaaS apps and things like that. So the cybersecurity work of the MEF is actually really critical because there's not a lot of groups that are focusing on cybersecurity the way we are. You can go into different standards bodies and they're focusing on their narrow segment of cybersecurity, but we're looking at it from a much more holistic perspective.
I'm glad you brought that in and talking about the evolving perimeter there. Daniele?
Yeah, if I may add to Ralph, that was giving a very comprehensive overview about cybersecurity. I would add that it's not just about cybersecurity, but work from anywhere is also about the experience that we give to the end user. I mean, the end user today doesn't need just to work from home or anywhere. He pretends to have the same experience as if he is sitting in the office. So not only we need to take care about the security, not only about the holistic way that we manage security, notwithstanding if the application is in our corporate data center, under the table, or remotely in the cloud. But we need also to give the end user the flexibility to choose independently the way he wants to work, because the experience that he has is consistent everywhere. This is one of I would say, the most important topic today. Our customers are buying experience from us. It's not just about quality, about price, about anything else. It's about experience. So automation, automated billing, API, it's all about improving the experience of our end customers.
And to that point, and I think another point that Andrew made earlier is, when you think about that experience, are you looking at it like an on-demand experience across multiple providers? That's kind of like the ultimate experience. But do you all agree that that's ultimately where we're going to be, where we're going?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way we are developing things, and that's the way we need to proceed from today on to develop things. Sonata was one of the first experiences. Now I believe we are extending the APIs towards the enterprise space. So enterprises will order services, not just connectivity, but will order services, any kind of services. They can even implement connectivity through their infrastructure as a code systems. The same way they instantiate a virtual machine or a container through code, they need to be able to order connectivity services from us. And the experience should be consistent across all the service provider their connectivity will traverse.
I think on that point, Jens, on the evolution, and I do agree with everything that has been said by everyone across the call, is not only across service provider. It's for me, and I recently have a network advisory council with my top customers. What they are expressing is very clearly now, they are all ahead of infrastructure, of network plus. And definitely across the last 18 months, 2 years, they have moved from being very network centric to a more holistic responsibility, including security, including cloud connectivity, including all these kind of things. And what they are expecting is, first of all, they recognize that everything is IT. Everything is an IT asset now. And so what they are willing to is really to have this seamless ability as an IT asset across vendors, service providers, hyperscalers, as Sean was saying just before, because what they are willing to is, very importantly, what they said is, what they expressed, they were running the business, they were running the infrastructure. Now they are changing the business. They are moving from a cost control to a to be part of the profit center of profit. So they are very close to the line of business. And what they were saying is, if there is a new solution, if there is a new feature, a new release from a vendor or whatsoever, we want to have it right now. We don't want to spend 6 months or 9 months for you, service provider, to make sure that you will be able to implement it or whatsoever. They want things to be very available seamlessly. And all the stuff that we are doing, all what we are thinking about in terms of zero trust, the SASE world, the way to connect to the cloud. I want a connectivity to Azure. Sean is there. I will not say anything else, but I want a connection to any hyperscaler. I want it digitally to be able to open it from my service provider to Azure on demand. And this is where we need to have this seamlessly, not only between service provider, but between service provider and hyperscaler, between service provider and vendor. And it's where MEF has a big role to play, in my opinion, in this area.
If I can add something to this, Stan, everybody, I think in addition to between ourselves and customer and hyperscalers is also within ourselves. So all this on-demand world is driving and pushing and possibly also putting pressure on our internal infrastructure, IT infrastructure, I mean in particular, to drive changes, to adopt internal APIs, to adopt microservice-based architecture to be able to respond. Because if you try to implement on-demand services without looking at how your systems connect with each other, it's going to be very hard. So we can't just patch the external, but also the internal one.
Right. So that transformation's at a business level, a service level, network level, and then also on the professional side, right? I mean, I assume lots of training challenges there. I wanted to go back to the, given that we do have Sean in the cloud perspective here, I wanted to get your thoughts on, how are service providers going to be able to work together more closely with the clouds going forward? A better together world, Sean.
Yeah, and I think it's an awesome opportunity for both of us to really expand out the base of business that we can make, and add value to our joint collective customers. So, as anybody who knows me, because I'm pretty fanatic on this spot, is I really think that the whole, and Amir mentioned it earlier about the power of Industry 4.0. That's our ability to sort of extend the power of AI and ML into the real world, into people's core businesses and the way that they do things, not just optimizing the IT back office, but optimizing the shop floor or the retail floor. That's where we get the shop in a box, dock in a box. Like we love apparently putting things in boxes. And it's a chance for us to really grow that. But to do that, again, becomes this, as Andrew mentioned before, and I think all of you have talked about that ease of consumption, both for, and I'll say it for the end user, but also for the developer community. And the combination, there's two things you need, right? You have to have infrastructure and an app to run, and you've got to have connectivity to the end user. And the shorter the distances between the two of those, and the more we've got an API set that are standardized and easy to use across the two of them, the more opportunity there is for us to build out that ecosystem. So the consistency and sort of, no developer wants to have to understand the mysteries of the network, and to be really honest, they don't want to delve into the security. So to the extent that we're able to define intent-based APIs exposed upward from the network, carry, in concert with the services that are offered out of the hyperscale, and present that to the developer community to build simpler, more intuitive applications, that then in turn, will spark adoption and drive utilization from the users underneath, and as a result, we'll all benefit because the whole thing will float upwards. And again, it creates the opportunity for the network provider to really differentiate based on their ability to be close to the user. In other words, they can deliver a lower latency experience. If you think about certain applications, under a millisecond is generally the accepted speed at which you've got to deliver industrial controls equipment. 7 to 10 milliseconds is both AR, VR, dynamic content, and teleoperated machinery. So as you can place that data there. People care about where data gets processed. In other words, from a regulatory compliance, as well as just from a sheer processing volume, being able to control where you collect and then how you process that data, and then where the AI functions run and what they do all putting, the network has a lot of control over a lot of that happens. So those all enable these applications to be done more efficiently or more in compliance with regulation or more effective overall. And the operator has a lot of inherent advantages when it comes to making that happen. And obviously we'd like to partner closely to grow the entire ecosystem together.
Excellent. I wanted to ask everyone here your perspective on what are the highest priority areas of work for your, if you think at an industry level, but perhaps also, for your own company. What do you think are the most important areas of MEF work impacting customers and revenue opportunities for MEF members?
Maybe I'll go first, Stan. So look, based on the trends and based on what we are hearing from the customers and based on, what Sean and Andrew and others pointed out, one of the key things we have to do is provide network as a service, right? Because, and those of us who have been in the network world, we know how painful it is to get things installed, provisioned, activated. We are now living in a world where we have seen like literally 5 years of digital transformation happen in 3 or 4 months. So the customers who are not like really on for all digital work, they are adopting it much faster than they were ever before. So, providing a service platform, so the work we do, whether it's LSO work or anything else, we have to start thinking about how we tune this into kind of a digital environment, serve the customers how they like to use cloud. And by the way, it's multi-cloud because most customers have 2 or 3 different locations they want to connect to, and help them move their applications. One. Second, we used to go sell to the folks who would take care of infrastructure. Now I often find myself in front of the person who's responsible for digital experience in the company, right? So I think about things a lot differently than somebody who's responsible for, feeds and feeds. And their value proposition is all about how I can create a platform that's reliable. So having secure network as a service, fully reliable, regardless of the medium it works on, regardless of the technology that's used, is a top priority for us. So that's one. Second, we want to make sure that we provide things like broadband anywhere. And so what does that mean? That means the customers want to use bandwidth. They don't care how it gets to them, whether it's wireless, whether it's wireline, whether it's 5G, 4G, regardless. They want a consistent experience. And we've got, we've got 3G, PP2, putting out standards. We've got standards which are coming out of MEF. How do you kind of look at this thing holistically and pull it all together to create a value proposition that makes sense for the customers, like customer first, their experience first, simplicity in the experience that we create, everything that we just talked about is paramount to our success.
Yeah, and you make me think of the end-to-end slicing with 5G and also the wireline networks being able to work together. That requires bringing a lot of different experience into play here. Anyone else want to comment on the top priorities for you?
Yeah, I think this gets back to the...
Okay, go ahead, Fahad. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this gets back to something that Daniele and Amir and Andrew also brought up, the user experience, right? So in fact, when we draw diagrams in a network, we show a cloud and we show a uni and then we show the enterprise cloud, right? We show these things as clouds, and we always focused on sort of the device level or the inside the network. But when you talk about customer experience, you're talking about 2 things. One is you have to identify the application and the user, right? So that you treat those better than just indiscriminate packets going in the network, right? So if you look at SD-WAN, or MEF 70.1 standard was really the first one that started looking deeper into applications, application flows, where now it's not just indiscriminate packets, it's looking at, is this a Teams call or a Blue Jeans call or whatever, and now being able to treat that better. Getting back to Andrew's point and Daniele, is the user experience the same whether it's on the internal network or from home? And that's why you have to look at the applications. And then if you look at where we're going with MEF-W 118 and SASE 117, where we're now looking at users and identifying users. So we're now taking it from what were indiscriminate packets to the applications that drive the application flows, to the actual application, and then to the user. And so now that's really important from cybersecurity, but from a user experience, and then driving the APIs for the automation, because I think Amir said this, where you really want network as a service. We've come over the last several years with the cloud providers where I can spin up a cloud environment in minutes. Why does it take 30 days? I think Andrew brought this up. We can't look at the old telco model where it takes 30, 60, 90 days to turn up a service. We got to move more towards that cloud model, because that gets towards user experience, spinning up new services, and that leads to the network as a service, like Amir mentioned.
Okay. And yes, and thanks, Ralph, for that, because it was exactly in line with what I wanted to add. Is from what Pascal said, the registration of Pascal, it was very great because it's very pedagogic. You have to do the SD-WAN and the underlay, and you have to do the SASE, and you have to do the security. But at the end of the day, you have to wrap up of that in order to face customer experience. So of course you have to build all this piece, but it's very an holistic view that we need to build in, and let's say to really move from where we were with, let's say, the MPLS world, with a very close world, with data center inside the network, with all this stuff, and to move all this with the same level of quality of service, but with two things which are completely new. One is a much more open world with cloud and internet as a transport, any kind of underlay, as Amir was saying about 5G, internet, whatever it is. For the customer, it doesn't care. Let's say it's just want to be connected. And in the meantime, to have it on demand. On demand meaning digital, meaning orchestrated, meaning automated. And we have to build all that. And what is very positive is, again, coming from this network advisory council, these customers are waiting for us, are expecting us as network service provider to drive them into this journey, to make this journey with them. And so it's where MEF could bring a lot of acceleration by combining all our resources or our forces to make that happen, because it's where customers are moving. They are not willing to move in one day, maybe for a small piece of their application, but they have a huge transformation to make. They have a lot of experience to make. They are very agile in their business. And so they are expecting us to provide the enabler to this transformation. And they know that it will not come overnight, but they want and they are willing to see us moving into that direction to make sure that they will count on us in the next 3, 4, 5 years in front of us.
Great. Excellent point. Anyone else want to comment on that, on the MEF work?
Well,
no, but Stan, there is a fascinating question in the chat that I'd love to take up, because I think it's an interesting one. So there's the question of the board: is there a risk that a fully automated environment will increase competition and drive the race to the bottom? And I think there's an industry challenge that sort of, so there was two things where this industry has traditionally created value, and I'm speaking as sort of an ex-operator person versus my current role. And that's in creating closed user groups and sort of unique experiences on the network layer. And the challenge is that there's a whole, I live in Silicon Valley, there's a whole group of people here that do nothing but look for people that do that and find new ways to disrupt it. So you're kind of swimming against the tide of where the investment dollars are going with that thinking. In other words, I think that there's a lot, I think what's so important about the MEF is that it brings together a consistent deployment and scale to the operator community so they can partner together and offer a scale offer upwards and thus create value. And if you continue to stay locked in kind of the model of a closed user group that sort of prevents people from stepping out of it because it's difficult to do that and you're stuck with it, there's all sorts of people that are out there now finding ways to get around that. I sit on the board of directors of a small company that sort of is an intelligent overlay that looks for the cheapest possible route or the most secure route based on sort of your need across the whole group of people to grab that. And I know it's one of many people that are out there trying to do something similar. There's a whole, there's whole companies that built models. Like if you look at essentially what some of the API companies have done, where they've basically said, hey, it was hard to deal with this, so they snuck around the edges to find a way to create value by interfacing with the operators, and created that simple, easy to use layer. And now they're worth, their multiples are better than some of the rest of the industry now in doing that. And so I think this is, the discussion has to shift away from closed user groups and sort of restricted sort of situations to a much, you want to capture the next generation of content forms, the next generation of applications. You're not going to do that unless you do it in such a way that opens it widely to the developer and the user community. There's just the two notions are incompatible with each other. So, and then the battleground becomes the things that the people on this call have already, the people that joined this board get it, right? It's security, it's ease of use, it's developer, it's developer friendliness and consistency, all the stuff that Frank and Daniele and Ralph have been talking about, as well as Mirko. Those all become super, super important. That becomes the battleground.
Right. Well said. So, several of you have commented on MEF and MEF's role, but what do you think is the most important impact that MEF is having on the market, and where do you see us going over the next several years? Perhaps Mirko, Daniele, you want to?
Yeah, I can. I mean, if I look at I'm off mute. Yes. So today, MEF is the driving force. If you look at ourselves around here, and the participation within MEF is the driving force in the connectivity space, where, and I think that's undoubted, there's other standards out there, but we're driving the standard definition for connectivity and expanding into adjacent spaces. Where I see as in 5 years, I think we'll have fulfilled the current goals. If we will see there's a major digital transformation ongoing, we all discussed about that, driven by adoption of a number of technologies, AI, blockchain, cloud, edge, you name it. If connectivity driven by the standards that MEF defines will be the fabric of that interconnected world, that we'll have achieved our goals. I think the other angle that I see is that if you look around us, there are a number of other standard bodies. I think we will also need to continue to build and improve on the liaisons we have built with other forums, TMF, IEEE, you name it again, IATF, and so on and so forth, because one of the challenges we have as an industry is the proliferation of different standards. So avoiding duplication is going to be of paramount importance. So I think that will be also the direction that I see the MEF, and I want the MEF to continue on.
Okay.
I agree with you, Mirko. If I may add something, Stan, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I mean, in 5 years from now, I think that there will be very blurred concept between cloud providers, service providers, connectivity providers. I think everybody will evolve towards a kind of platform model whereby there will be entities providing services and entities providing other entities to exchange services between them. Our role of as MEF today is to provide consistency and, in my opinion, to enable that kind of world. The work that is being done with the LSO framework, with Sonata, with MEF 3.0 is, I think, the first consistent step towards this kind of platform world. And our role as consistency should proceed bringing to the table not only Sean, because Sean was, a good exit from MEF, but he went now to the hyperscaler world, but we should bring many other Sean coming from all the other hyperscalers, because, what it is, tends to create great disruption, but to be a little bit close among themselves. If we want to provide consistency and a consistent experience to our users, independently whether they are consuming a service or they are enabled by a platform called Sparkle or Orange to consume AWS or Google, this consistency needs to expand toward those boundaries, needs to go out of just the connectivity space and enter deeper and deeper in this space. So this is my dream.
Excellent. Yeah, Andrew, I want to bring you back in and get your thoughts on most important work of MEF, or the impact that MEF is having, and where we go next.
Yeah, well, I agree with a lot of the comments that were made. You know, the way I look at it is I look at what our enterprise customers are going to want to, what services they're going to want in the future. And Amir talked about how his conversations are changing with customers. I couldn't agree more, right? As a company that has come from selling traditional telecom services, the conversations that we need to be enabling with our customers aren't about telecom services. They're about enabling applications. And it's that platform that Daniele talked about that's going to enable it. And it's more than network. It does incorporate cloud services as well, and network working together with security. So, you know, the work that MEF is doing to help enable that, I think, is going to be critical for the way that services are consumed in the future. And, you know, looking out 5 years, what I'd love to see is, you know, a lot of the great foundational work that's been done by the MEF so far is around the LSO APIs. I'd love to see widespread adoption of those APIs because I do think that's going to be the enabler for creating the experience of the platform. And then see us continue to broaden the services that we expect that enterprises will need to be able to enable their environment. And I think we've got a lot of them here already in progress. There may be other ones that we need to pick up over the next 5 years, but I think we're on the right track toward enabling that platform and that experience that is going to be so critical for the future.
So on the LSO API front, you know, if you think about Sonata supporting you know, MEF-defined services like Access E-Line and Internet Access. But what about non-MEF-defined services? How do you all feel about Sonata being used for those? I know Pascal's been talking about it, but what's your thought on that?
Again, I think network is becoming a real network and connectivity, because it's not only a network only type of a platform, but we need to build, as Andrew was saying, and I think Daniele as well. It's everything around, and it's now how we can bring into all these services, all these API technology, container as a service technology, all the technology that will allow us to get this agility and flexibility to set up 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 services for one customers, and maybe 2 other services for another customers, and 1 services in addition to another one, and make them available for customers. And it's where I think there are 2 levels for me. There is a very strong infrastructure level, because to set up a platform type of business, platform type of services, you need to build it. And you need to have a wide coverage, because why the security, why the hyperscaler, why all these services are also coming to MEF, it's because at the end of the day, in order to deliver it properly with the right level of service, you need to think as we are thinking for years and years and decade. To make that happen, you need a coverage, you need a footprint, you need an extensive way of delivering things. So Sonata for me is this capability to expand the footprint of each of us, and to be part of this global community, this global platform. But then we need to also add other type of technology to insert services into this platform. So there are several layers on this, and Sonata remains a key area for the footprint extension, the availability, but we need also to think about other type of interconnection or API or what Mirko was saying about internal IT within our company as well, way of thinking, because we need all these assets, we need all these enablers to make that happen.
All right, excellent.
I do think one. I have not been taught too much so far about the zero trust work, but zero trust, in my opinion, it's something which is a bit revolutionary for service provider like us, and I think it's a good example of where we need to push and to carry on, because it will be a strong enabler to make all this happen also in the next 5 years.
You know, given that we have so many service providers here on the board, service perspectives, I'm wondering if you could talk to the vendor community, the technology vendor community, and perhaps share what's on your wish list. What do you need from the technology vendors going forward to help realize the vision that we're talking about here? On-demand services across multiple providers, being able to support application-centric services. Anyone want to comment on that? Speak to the vendor community?
I'll go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Ralph.
Amir?
Yeah, I was going to say, we several of us talked about, getting the network to a sort of a platform as a service, a network platform as a service, and the MEF with the API and the automation get you to that level, because I think several have said that really what you want to do is be able to, get that automation in place. And that's actually a good thing, because, you want to move away from that 30, 60, 90-day, delivery model to get into that automation where, you can then start layering applications. And if in Pascal's session, he talked about edge. Right now, when you talk about edge computing and tying that into 5G slices, you need all that automation in place to be able to, you want to build it as a network platform as a service so that you can automate all of everything from the network, from ordering to billing to provisioning, et cetera, and then being able to just put applications on top of that, right? So if I want an application that focuses on, that needs to use network resources and slices and edge compute resources, I want all that stuff automated, and then I can focus on, I'm doing manufacturing automation, or I'm doing a drone, where I want to do some video surveillance, where I want to do some machine learning. That's where, the enterprises are focusing on the business applications there. The network is an incredibly important part of that, but it can't be like so hard to be able to get an application onboarded, and then it takes, we're using CI/CD processes to be able to develop that app really, really fast. But then, it takes months to get the network ready. You have to tie all of that in automation all the way from the application level all the way down through into the network. And so the work that the MEF is doing on the APIs and the automation and building the models, you have to have a model of the network, whether it's SD-WAN or carrier Ethernet or whatever. You need the model so that you can build the APIs to create the automation.
Okay. Amir?
Yeah, I think Ralph has covered most of what I was going to say. Look, at the end of the day, it's about learn, buy, get, use, pay, serve experience. We need to make sure that our vendor community, when they build their platform, even though they adhere to standards, I often find myself doing more integration than I like to for each software release or each feature functionality that comes into play, right? So can we adopt the standards? Can we think from customer first? Can we look at the whole code to cache experience and make it simple for adoption by their end customers? I think that will help accelerate some of the things we just talked about today. So if I have one ask, please adopt MEF as much as you can, and be open to adding it to your new software hardware releases to make sure that we have to lead by example. And if you're a partner, if you're a member of MEF, talk to your service provider partner and see how we can work together better to help create more adoption of some of the standards that we are building.
All right. Well, hey, I think I want to end on that one. That's a great call to action for the community. So I want to thank the board members here. Thank you all very much. We have global perspectives, different regions of the world represented, and you all are great innovators in the industry. So thank you very much. And I guess back over to Kevin.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Stan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Bye-bye.
Great session.
Yeah, great. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Stan, for doing a nice job on the moderating front. So we're going to now move into the we call it tables and chairs segment, which is comprised of 4 committee pieces. We're going to start with the Commercial and Business Committee, then move to the Digital Services Committee, LSO Committee, and then Test and Certification. Commercial and Business, you've got about 10 minutes. And then Digital Service, you've got 15, LSO 15, Test and Certification is 10 minutes. The format that you'll see is we're going to have a staff member moderate each of the sessions. And we're going to very quickly go through an overview of some of the fundamentals of each committee. And then we're going to get into Q&A. And, Michael, if you're going over, I'll jump in and cut you off, all right? So, as you'd expect. But anyway, Michael Gagnon from the MEF team is here. Take it away, Michael.
Kevin, thank you very much. Can you all hear me clearly? I hope you can.
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. So Daniel and Laurent, thank you for joining us. As Kevin was saying, I'll be moderating. What I'll do is I'll look at my watch right now and I'll give you guys a shout out at 5, 3, and 1 minute just to keep things going. But 2 things I'd like to do. One, to ask a question, and second, to give you a thought, which is for the people listening today. Why is the CBC going to become such an important difference maker, at MEF as we go forward? And then the thought is, why should members join the CBC right now? So I'll leave those 2 things with you. And I guess what I'd like you to do is, if I could just ask you both to just introduce yourselves and talk about your role within the MEF. And then I think I'll hand it over to go through the presentation deck that we prepared, if that's okay.
Great. Laurent, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So in my day job, I head up network architecture and engineering for Lumen in EMEA. And for the MEF, previously to the CBC, I used to be a co-chair. Spent 18 months as a co-chair of the LSO committee, involved in supporting the prioritization and the standardization exercise around all the suite of APIs forming the MEF 3.0 framework. That's me in 2 words.
And I'm Daniel Bardlev. I'm from the MEF team, working with Michael, of course, and Kevin and the rest of the team. I'm responsible for bootstrapping a lot of the new programs at MEF. I'm involved in SD-WAN and then SASE, the MEF 3.0 Poc program, and right now I'm supporting the start of the Commercial and Business Committee.
Excellent, excellent. So what about that? Why do you think, Daniel, that the CBC is going to be such an important difference maker? Because it's a little rotation, it's more towards commercial. So I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, we started with the technical committee back at the beginning of MEF 20 years ago. And over the years, we've been adding committees. We added the LSO committee. Then we added the applications committee, which is now the Digital Services Committee. And last year, it was decided that we needed to continue that progress and add in a commercial and business aspect to the work of MEF. So a lot of the very important work that's done in the LSO committee and the Digital Services Committee is very technical in nature. But as we know, business motivation, the drivers and the business thinking is becoming increasingly important when you're talking about automation, especially of commercial and business life cycles. So we saw this as an opportunity to create a committee and engage more of the commercial business and product people that are less concerned in their day jobs with the technical aspects and more with the product and the business side.
If I can add something.
Excellent.
here.
Laurent, do you have a perspective on that as well?
Yes, I felt it was important to join the Commercial and Business Committee earlier on this year, in January this year. To Daniel's point here, really the way I saw it was bridging the gap between the vision at the board level and CTO level. So we've had presentations from both board members and from Pascal, the MEF CTO, this morning, highlighting the end-to-end vision in terms of customer experience, digital experience, having that frictionless operation across the whole ecosystem, or the digital service provider ecosystem. And I felt that perhaps we needed that middle layer where the Commercial and Business Committee sits to actually translate that vision and go down into the more technical, definitely more technical committees like the DSC or the LSOC to try to steer the whole membership towards the positive outcome, towards giving us the ability to deliver that vision.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's a great segue. Daniel, would you like us to bring up the slides now so that we can use those to complement the rest of the discussion that you're going to have? Would that be good?
That would be great. Yes, I'll talk us through the first couple of slides. So yeah, just to capture what we're talking about in our vision and a lot of what the board members were saying, that the Commercial and Business Committee is working, join the dots between the work in the different committees in order to sort of get that automation, that consistent customer experience, enable the work that we're doing in terms of standardization to enable that. Obviously, the Digital Services Committee, the LSO Committee, and the Test and Certification Committee doing very, very important work. There's leadership as well that's overseeing that. But what we feel in the Commercial and Business Committee is that there's an opportunity by connecting the dots and showing how it all comes together, and I'll show this in the next slide, that we actually start achieving the business objectives that we have. So in practical terms, we want to enable contributions of our members, and all members can contribute and participate in the Commercial and Business Committee as they can with all the committees. We want to enable business-oriented prioritization of a lot of the work and thinking that's going on. So obviously the members decide what projects are going to happen. But what we want to do is to facilitate the injection of expertise on the business side and business thinking, so that there's that business context to what projects are started and what gets prioritized. And the counterpoint to that, of course, is to facilitate the filling of emerging gaps. And what do we mean by that? When we have the big picture, we can point out what we feel, and we can give a couple of examples of that as to where there are gaps that are emerging that are going to hold back progress, and try and steer member contributions and member expertise and member resources in that direction. And of course, this all has to be done in alignment with Pascal's technology roadmap, which he's been presenting over the last few years and updating. We just need to make sure that it's in that context. Perhaps we could look at the next slide. So what we have here in this diagram is we're going to be talking about this in the first hour of two sessions, working sessions that we're going to have tomorrow morning, Wednesday, and Thursday. And what this diagram does is it talks about how exactly what the board members were talking about. The service providers are getting closer and closer to the edge customer, to the end customer, delivering edge services, and they need to actually create very complex dynamic products, services on demand, and that requires trusted partners that can source those components in real time, whether it's connectivity, whether it's compute, whether it's security. And what we see, these orange bubbles on the right, all the different work that's going on in MEF that's actually converging in order to enable that. So if people are interested in understanding this better, we're going to be reviewing this in detail. And obviously the work that we're going to be discussing after that is all based on this framework. So in terms of the top work items, the first one is a very active group. As we said, we've been bootstrapping the Commercial and Business Committee since the middle of last year, since July. And we've been finding our direction. And one of the most active groups in the Commercial and Business Committee, the most active, is the incubation group that's focused on LSO Sonata, partner onboarding and interop verification. I think it was Andrew Dugan that highlighted the need to accelerate adoption of LSO Sonata. This is a very important framework for doing that. And we'll be talking about that in more detail during the sessions. There's a commercial pilot that we're working to get started. So that's a very, very important aspect of the Commercial and Business Committee, and in general, building and accelerating the strategy there. The second item, smart bilaterals and omnilaterals, that's all of the DLT, otherwise known as blockchain work. The first draft standard we're hoping to get out in May for what is now MEF W114, which is DLT-based billing and settlement. And we introduced this construct in MEF W114 of smart bilaterals and omnilaterals, and we've got to the point now where we actually have service provider members that are operationally using DLT blockchain in order to do ordering and billing of on-demand services. So we want to accelerate that. We want to see how we can onboard more service providers into that framework, because that's a very important part of streamlining and accelerating the whole commercial and business interaction between service providers and their customers. Perhaps, Laurent, I'd like to give you a chance to highlight a couple of points here. Perhaps you could talk about the next two bullets.
Yeah, sure. So standardized invoices, again, within mind the whole frictionless environment or operations between the suite of digital service providers, forming that customer experience end-to-end. Standardized invoices is one of the key topics for us to address at a business level, and have the ability to agree between all of the members the standard of what constitutes a good invoice. And something some of that work was kicked off at Lumen at the back end of last year. We'd seek this week through the discussion which we're having tomorrow on Thursday, perhaps, and getting an agreement across the membership and into the next step moving forward. First of all, voting on a motion and creating an incubation group as a result of it. The second bullet point around a product payload is really for us to agree on the prioritization of this product payload going forward. As a standard body, we've defined attributes and service definitions. We've defined service models around Ethernet, carrier Ethernet, internet services, SD-WAN. But we've yet to come up on a prioritization plan for all of these aspects of the technology. So perhaps an opportunity for us again this week between members to discuss about what should come first or what should come next from a product payload specification perspective.
Excellent, excellent. That we're coming right up to the end of our 10 minutes. So Daniel or Laurent, any final thoughts that you'd like to give the membership before we hand the baton off to the next presenters?
Yeah, obviously, we've got two sessions. One tomorrow at 9 a.m. UK time. It's going to it's Europe and Asia friendly, and then on Thursday it's going to be North American friendly, so 9 a.m. Pacific. And you can see the details in the agenda on that link, CBC second quarter members meeting agenda page. The sort of audience, we want everybody to come in, obviously, but we want to focus a lot on the commercial and business people and the product people. So people that have expertise in pre-order, order, billing and settlement, the different life cycles, the sorts of products that are going to be offered, the sort of complex product packages that are going to be offered at the edge, sort of use cases for the end customer. We'll find these working sessions very interesting. We're going to have up to eight incubation groups proposed. We're not sure that all of them will move forward, but all of that can be seen on the agenda page. Laurent, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to the North American centric session, so that we, to your point, we expand the realm of this discussion and bringing new members and perhaps have a very positive and engaged exchange as a result of it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Just my thought as I listen to you talk, I mean, this is incredibly important work, because this radical simplification of both buying and selling, and then the smart billing and settlement, to me is just really a day one thing that has to happen. So I wish you luck, with the committee. And I think this will be one of the reasons why we'll be able to attract more members, because of this ability to bring, market focused innovation into the work that we're doing here at MEF. So thank you very much. Enjoy the week. And Kevin, I believe that it's the Digital Services Committee that's next up on the podium. So we'll hand it back to you folks.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Laurent. I think I'll take it from here, because I'm going to now take your place, Michael, and moderate the Digital Services Committee. So we'll just welcome Jesse Rouillet from Nokia, Charles Eckel from Cisco, Jason Wolf from Bell Canada, and I believe, yes, Mark Gibson from Ciena. So here are our four committee co-chairs for the Digital Services Committee. And before we get to the Q&A session, I'm going to ask Mark to take us through the first few slides. So Mark, if you're ready.
We just lost Mark.
I'm very sorry, I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you, sir.
What's just happened? I've lost. I can't hear you. No longer hear what's going on, I'm afraid.
So perhaps Jason, do you want to? Oh, there we go. Mark, can you hear us now? No luck. So Jason, perhaps you get us.
Yes, sorry, I can hear you now. I do apologise. The automatic system had taken over the wrong speakers by mistake.
No worries. So Mark, over to you for to take us through the first few slides.
Sure, yeah, and I think one of the key focuses that the Digital Services Committee focuses on is really kind of defining standards. As I was kind of thinking about what to say for this slide, it occurred to me how much for granted in our everyday conversations today we now take the terms uni and EVC, and one of the things that we really do and continue to do in the Digital Services Committee is to build that common lexicon of terminology, so that people can talk to each other about a service and describe it in terminology which is common across their entire organization, from the front end, from the ordering piece, all the way down to the network engineer who needs to understand how the uni is supporting the services which overlie that. So just really starting having that common lexicon for for Ethernet services was really where the Services Committee came from. We're now kind of expanding that into areas like SD-WAN and starting to put common lexicon and terminology around that. Extending the definitions that we have, and then taking that forward into our active work areas as well, so that when you as a customer order something, you know what you're getting. When you as a service provider have to provide it to a customer, you equally know what you're buying and what you're providing, and where your areas of responsibility really start and end. So being able to standardize that in a way where you can provide a list of attributes in a service which says this is what this is just vitally important to as the first step of any part of offering a service. The work items that we span it's really quite a long list, and quite an impressively long list. We've started to look into secure access service edge, and that's become a real kind of focus for us in the last little while. We have numerous work items in the SD-WAN space. One of the kind of go-to things for MEF is really the standardization work we're doing in SD-WAN, and we see a lot of both vendors and operators in the space participating pretty pretty vigorously. So I think it's we're seeing a lot of kind of traction there, but we're also seeing increasing traction on areas like cybersecurity, and again seeing how that ties into the SASE. And if you remember Pascal's slide, that is that really kind of puts into context that whole piece of work. And then we see kind of other work areas in and layer one, network slicing, and really a bunch of other areas where we're kind of driving these standards forwards. I think then once we've done that initial piece of work, once we've understood what the attributes are, once we've kind of put them into rough groups, the work that we do in the Digital Services Committee can then be taken into other areas of MEF. So, for example, once we have a service definition with attributes and an understanding of what those attributes will result in for an end-to-end service, that can be taken to certification, and we can start to certify MEF standard services in the service provider community. And that's a really key output of the Digital Services Committee. Another key thing is we can start to use these as kind of start points for doing more complete service models. So when you want to understand how to orchestrate a service within LSO, and when you want to understand how to buy it in Sonata, the work that we do in the Digital Services Committee is really the first strong footprint in the ground on the road towards that a fully orderable and manageable service. So we really see that the Digital Services Committee really starts the progress in MEF of each of these technology areas to a fully automatable, orderable, every other model you can have for each of these service areas. So, these are our current top work items. SASE certainly is the item that's gaining kind of the most external interest and external traction. I think it's a really interesting and important new area for MEF to go forward, and really kind of builds on the foundational work that we started in SD-WAN, looking at those sort of services which overlay our more traditional Ethernet and IP space, and really kind of taking the MEF story to the edge and looking at how that is offered and managed and modeled. We still have a really strong core of SD-WAN managed services work. You'll notice that the initial SD-WAN spec is now in its second iteration, so we now have a 70.1 of the core MEF SD-WAN spec, and we're already starting to look forward to 70.2 and try to think about what work items look like for that. So that's an area of really kind of strong and I would say very sustained work and output from the Digital Services Committee. The universal SD-WAN edge work is also starting to kind of pick up shape and focus, and is really kind of building on that 70.1 foundation. And as does the performance monitoring and service readiness testing. Again, without the initial MEF-70 draft, we wouldn't really be able to do the work in MEF W105. So that is really driving us forward. And likewise, I go straight to the bottom. The application security for SD-WAN services piece equally would kind of struggle to move forward without that MEF-70 baseline. So that MEF-70 baseline has really allowed us to spawn 3 other concrete pieces of work which relate to it. But we're also, as I said, we're also looking into the cybersecurity space, beyond simple SASE. You'll have seen that how the zero trust framework work fits into that overall edge and sort of beyond the edge work that we're looking at in MEF, and equally the application security work also takes us very firmly into understanding what security means for drivers using these types of services. So when are we meeting this week? Well, I'm afraid you've already missed some of the SD-WAN editing sessions, which happened on Monday, and some of the cybersecurity areas. But the main Digital Services Committee sessions will be on Wednesday and Thursday this week, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. Or in different time zones depending on where you're watching this from. We will have additional editing sessions. There's a couple right after the plenary here, and then there's some additional ones on Friday. I would encourage you to go look at the Digital Services Committee page for this this quarterly meeting, to get the full detail. But that certainly shouldn't be too hard to find. And you can see the link for it there in the slides. But if you found your way here, based on finding the plenary page, and if you scroll to the top and look at click on any of the links that say DSC editing sessions, that will take you right to our overall agenda for this meeting. So in spite of all the great progress that we've made, we still need more. We still need more input. We still need more strong voices to help us really shape where we're going with this. And I think I run the risk of saying this for each of the bullets, so I'll say it just once up front. Having service provider input is really important to us. It really helps us understand, from the provider perspective, what do you want the service to do, and therefore what attributes are interesting? What are the levers you want to be able to offer to your customers when they want to use and operate or buy, or just simply buy a particular service? But certainly in the cybersecurity space, we have a lot of we have a lot of good contribution, but we can always use more voices to help us kind of really shape that. And cybersecurity is quite a nuanced area, and so making sure we've got different aspects of and different kind of viewpoints on the same space is really important. Certainly, as we look to progress the IP services into the broadband access space, we could use some expertise as well in that particular sphere. So again, if anybody's out there on the call who has a particular desire to start contributing, again, as Kevin said, it's contribution as much as keeping current that we really particularly value within each of the committees. Then please do step forward and help us out there. And likewise, finally on the network slicing profiles definitions work, again, we could use some feedback from probably not the field. The field's probably the wrong term, but certainly the advanced kind of lab work and conversations that are going on around the usage patterns expected for network slices, so we can understand how to define profiles better for network slices. Finally, and an innovation for this meeting, we have a generic email address you see at the bottom of the screen there. If you've got any questions, if you want to get involved in any way, shape or form, email that. It'll go to all four of us, and we will all scramble to be the first person to reply to your question. But in all seriousness, we're all happy to kind of help you onboard into this.
I'd just like to squeeze in some questions if we can, like 3 questions. Charles, can you expand a little bit? Cybersecurity is really getting a lot of focus. Can you expand on what's going on there in the Digital Services Committee?
Sure, Daniel. That's definitely a big area for us. And when we've been working in this area for a while. We referred to it before more as just security, and I think it was a little challenging actually to get traction because there's so many aspects to security, and even cybersecurity. That was the first way we narrowed it down. We said, well, we're really going to focus on access to information and the securing of that information and as it flows through the network. So that's what we're looking at with cybersecurity, as opposed to, say, physical security or even securing your network infrastructure. Then the other huge step, and I think Mark alluded to this, was even within that space, it's really quite broad. And what we did was we took our successful SD-WAN specification and we said, we're going to look at when you have application flows that you've identified and you're applying policies to them, how can you add security functions to what you will apply to those flows? And so that's what we're defining to provide application security in the context of SD-WAN. And that's the focus of MEF W88. And just narrowing the focus to that really allowed us to make some significant progress. And we're taking that same approach when we look at zero trust. Again, a very important area, and we're going to take a holistic look at it, but really focus initially on it in the context of SD-WAN. And then with SASE, huge term in the industry, it's an important thing, work item for MEF. And what that's going to do for us is take not only SD-WAN and the application security, but also the zero trust, and weave that all together into a very complete and comprehensive SASE service framework.
Thanks for that, Charles. Jason, MEF 61.1.1, the amendment to the very foundational MEF 61.1, could you just enlighten us why that's really critical at the moment? Sure, Daniel. So it's quite a modest amendment that we have planned, but we think it's going to have quite a large impact. And so MEF 61.1, the base standard to be amended, is the standard that defines the attributes for IP services that are visible to the subscriber of the service. That document did not specify the details of the lower layer technologies that could be used to convey IP packets back and forth across the external interfaces between the buying and selling parties at the UNI and at the EN&I. The document left placeholders for that, but no details. So that was sufficient at the time, but now the time has come that we need in Digital Services Committee to flesh out what those details are. And the reason for that is that the LSO committee needs that information in order to automate the provisioning of IP services via the LSO APIs. The specific trigger for doing the work now was the LSO Sonata APIs for ordering and quoting of internet access services, which by and large are being used as underlays for SD-WAN. But the need is really much broader than just that. So we will add those lower layer details at the UNI. We're also going to clarify some items around IP addressing that were not entirely clear in the original document. And with those two things, that will provide the LSO committee with the information that they need to flesh out the product payloads in their APIs. Great, thank you. Well, I've had time called on us, unfortunately. We had a few more questions, and I wanted to ask Jesse about network slicing, the work that's going on there, and a few more about SD-WAN, because there's very exciting work going on there. So what I think we'll try and find a way of getting those questions and answers out in written form for the membership so that they can see it. We'll find a good place to do that. But I'm sorry, we're going to have to wrap up here, unfortunately. And thank you very much indeed to all four of you. And I'm going to hand over now to Pascal, who's going to moderate the session with the LSO committee. Pascal, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Welcome, Kartik, and welcome, Michael. Kartik's mobile in his car. Yeah. Let me just start with, I really want to thank basically our board, who's done a tremendous job, luminaries in the industry to help us with our strategy. And I thank the leadership team. You guys have been instrumental to really creating and getting all our projects going and directing it and helping us. And you guys have been amazing. And finally, our members, without you contributing and participating, it wouldn't be possible. And finally, our staff, the endless hours we put in to help our members to do their work and really make an impact. So with that, let me start with, I want to thank the audience out there staying on, and we have some really great information for you on the LSO committee. So let me just turn it over.
Yeah, no problem. So I think like the 4 bullet points here is that we mostly define the LSO framework, modeling, and the LSO APIs. We work on the reference points to deliver for both the intra and inter-provider API automation. So that's between providers or internal to the actual provider's organization. More recently, our focus has been on the East-West commercial business automation. So that's what we call the Sonata Cantata. That would be B2B and B2C type interfaces. And we take a lot of input, foundational input, as we just heard from the last session from the DSC committee. So you know, they're responsible for defining the services, We then take those, turn them into service models, and then turn them into product offerings and product definitions and product specifications. And that's what we carry across the LSO APIs and developers. And that's what we also look to certify to use in the APIs themselves. So in terms of current top work items, it's really a lot of is around modeling. So MEF product models, MEF service models. And then there's the LSO APIs. As I mentioned, Sonata and Cantata for automating the commercial business use cases between providers and between a provider and its customer. And then Legato, which is, the very important piece for being able to provision those services and operational aspects of those services into the actual provider's network itself. And then I know there's been quite a lot of innovation around the use of DLT, blockchain. This was mentioned earlier also by Pascal, where we're looking at commercial and operational aspects that could be accelerated over DLT that are unique to using DLT. For example, providing the sort of shared records and trust between parties that otherwise needs to be established outside of that type of framework. This chart is actually a great chart, I think, in terms of, first of all, showing, where we are today with Sonata and Cantata. On one dimension, you've got the APIs themselves, and you can see the colored in pieces show how we progressed through the APIs, starting with the serviceability, the pre-ordering aspects, and now we're really starting to build on the ordering and the inventory aspects. And for the first time, actually, in the new release that's coming up in May, the Billy release, what we call the Billy release, we will introduce the first trouble ticketing implementation. Now, on the other axis, we have the carrier Ethernet and Internet access. I think these have been called out already as two most important services to negotiate over the APIs themselves. But there are a whole plethora of kind of different payloads that we see going forward. So, the APIs themselves are payload and, product payload and service agnostic. What we want is to be able to build out standardized payloads or even be able to support non-standard payloads or allow people to negotiate those over the same APIs, basically. Some additional dimensions which aren't shown in this chart are smart bilaterals. We also have work on a partner onboarding and interop validation solution, as Daniel mentioned in the CDC session. So this would be to provide for an efficient onboarding and interop verification. Very important, particularly where you have tens or hundreds of partners and you've got lots of products offerings that you're dealing with those partners. And we have the certification to sort of allow you to come to the table with the rubber stamp that says, we're ready to do some business and plug together and make ourselves interoperable. Identity management will ease the onboarding process for everybody if we can standardize the identity management security and the tooling, developers portal and blending capability. So all that tooling capability is something we're looking at as well in terms of how to enhance support both in the pre-standard development and also in the standard development aspects. Okay. And in terms of the meetings, I think it's the same schedule as the other committees like the DLC. So we'll be meeting on Wednesday from 9 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursday 9 to 3 p.m. on Eastern Time. And there are various editing sessions either side of that as well. For the full agenda is available on the website there. So actually, in terms of key contributors that we require, domain expertise, operations, subject matter expertise is critical, like, getting that input. We're talking about business processes being automated across these APIs. So having that insight and feedback from the providers who are on the front line is very, very important. And then, more and more importantly, we're moving to the software side of turning these standards, these great standards we've developed over a number of years, turning them into implementations at the providers. And in order to do that, we need more software and IT expertise and skills for that. So that's really, I think that's the end of it, Pascal. I think we're ready for some questions now.
I'd love to get maybe Michael first and then Kartik. Where are we with the current work items in our LSO? Can you help us with that, please?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we were going through the charts there and we saw there are kind of two dimensions to it. One is the first dimension is the standards development itself, and looking at the actual APIs, looking at the generic part of those APIs, and then also looking at those payloads, those product and service payloads. The second aspect is the SDKs and how we roll out the release of the SDKs, because as we develop the standards, we want to push out frequent SDKs that providers can actually implement. You know, the standards themselves take a long time to go through the whole process, and they kind of go hand in hand, the two of these activities. So in terms of the, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the actual where we are in terms of the APIs themselves, the priority has been set on the Sonata and Cantata APIs. So this is the East-West APIs, and we're in terms of pre-ordering, we're fairly well advanced at this stage, and we're also pretty advanced in the ordering, although there are several new capabilities being introduced into the ordering. And for the first time in the next release that will come out in May, that's the Billy release, we will have the trouble ticketing, the first trouble ticketing API and developer guides. In terms of the releases themselves, the SDK releases, each one of those has a theme. So the one that's already out there and just recently came out was called the Aretha, and that was really mainly about sort of bulking up the pre-ordering capability and the standard, and trying to produce a full set of documentation, the APIs for the existing pre-ordering. For the Billy release, the theme is more around ordering and product inventory, and then that introduction of the trouble ticketing. I think it's important to say that, like, even though everything's evolving all the time, people are actually and have been implementing the SDKs. They're in production. They're taking the versions of the SDK and have put them into production. So you're seeing real transactions happening across these APIs. So I'll pass over to Kartik, and he can talk a little bit more about the Legato and the service, the service layer. Yeah, thanks, Kartik.
Yeah, and let me add just a couple of more things, like even within Sonata. We talked a lot about APIs and SDKs. One thing that I want to stress is the standards part of it, like the business requirements and use cases. They have been fairly mature now, right, than what it was like a few years back. And we are releasing those as part of the SDK. And another thing is, like, you'll notice that whoever has been looking at the APIs, you'll find those APIs are actually fairly well aligned with the standards, the actual documents, business requirements and use cases that we are actually now shipping with the SDKs. Right. So I just want to feel like sort of stress that, like, notes, we feel that it's fairly mature. If you look at, like, you'll not find any like that many discrepancies between the standards and the APIs that as you would have found like maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. And then coming towards the Legato or the service side, in Legato, like basically, like, before even I go into Legato, like, I think this was mentioned earlier, but I'll stress it again. With APIs, like, we are using the TM Forum APIs for LSO APIs as the basis, right? We take the TM Forum APIs and then we extend it for MEF use, and we call this the envelope. The reason we call this the envelope is a service agnostic or product agnostic, right? It's a generic APIs that you can apply to any service or any product. Now in Legato, we focused more on what we call the payload, right? The payload is the actual MEF-specific services that you would actually order over this either Legato interface or the Sonata interfaces. So in Legato right now, we have in Aretha release, we released the draft version of SD-WAN, Carrier Ethernet, and L1 services. Now in the Billy release, they are actually further maturing it. These three, I would say, product or service-specific payloads have gone through CFC reviews. So we think they're a little more mature than what it was in the Aretha. And we'll also be working, we are working very hard to bring in the IP and other service payloads into Legato. So Legato, we are a little bit focusing slightly more on MEF services as opposed to the envelopes, and we're just leveraging the standard TMF APIs there.
Okay, thank you, Kartik. So look, hey, I just want to make sure we realize that we're doing not only work at Sonata Cantata, but also Legato, but also Presto. We did work in Presto. We want to honor that work. So it's not that we're saying the old, it's only about Sonata Cantata. All the reference points matter, but we eventually have to get there. So that's a great point. So let's go to the next question, and that's basically, what's the plan to support our LSO API developers? We've done some great developer guides. I've seen some of them. They're really good in the SDK shipping. Could you elaborate on that? Again, maybe start with Michael and then Kartik, please.
Sure. Kartik, would you like to go first in that one, the developer side, or are you okay?
Oh, sure, I can. So other thing is like, when we say APIs, we are not talking about typical standards folks, right? Our end audience is always developers. And to begin with, the first thing we did was like, when we started this activity, we said like the PDFs are not going to cut it, right? Developers don't like reading PDFs. So we switched our entire working model and our code review, standards review model by using JSON schemas and open APIs as a basis. And then we develop our developer guides, the documentation that explains how to use the APIs. We are actually editing and developing it in Markdown format. Now, using this, obviously these formats are very, very, very conducive to tooling. So you can use toolings to generate PDFs, or you can use like, read the docs. I mean, you can sort of generate in any number of formats from here. So that's the first thing. Like, we actually changed our method of working to be more developer friendly. We do all our CFC reviews using GitHub. Yes, obviously we can use like Jira and others. We have those in the plans. But the first step was we moved away from traditional PDF, Excel spreadsheet, Word doc review approach, right? So we hope this will actually bring more developers, not just to consume the APIs, but also help us in developing and reviewing the APIs. The second part is we are actually working on plans to bring in like what we are calling developer portal. So the developer portal would not just have APIs, but also have some supporting kits like like toolkits like for like SDK authentication, compliance test kits, and maybe like of course developer guide is part of it, but developer test suite, which I think Michael you can talk about. I'll just talk here and let you talk about the developer.
The developer test suite. No problem. I think the idea is to offer something that is not just an interface to GitHub, that might be more accessible and provide much more rounded set of artifacts and documents to support people, through a kind of a marketplace is one of the concepts. I mean, marketplace is probably not the best name for it, but we're still trying to find the name. But you can get the idea that there's a one-stop shop. You can go get all the information. It's easy accessible to you about the APIs, and it encourages people to share information easily in that environment. I think the other thing, Kartik, which is probably very important, is the developer community support that MEF has today. Which is there to be accessed, right? And the fact that there's been a big push on the developer guides is really brilliant, because those developer guides are quite comprehensive to support people in their development. And finally, the last thing I would like to add is the work that Daniel mentioned on the interop and onboarding solution that we're looking at to run a pilot for. What this solution will do is it'll allow for emulation of buyer and sellers within the environment, so completely configurable, and it would allow actual people to be able to test their implementations and test during the implementation phase, their APIs as they develop them one by one, and try to achieve that high standard before they can interoperate with other try to interoperate with other providers. I mean, oftentimes developers' first question when they come to it is, can I get some Postman scripts for the payloads or something like that? And they want to be able to test. We want to know what they have to hand to test. At the moment, it's they have to work from documentation and APIs, API definitions and things. So this type of tooling will really help them to accelerate their development. Okay. Sorry, Pascal.
Yeah, we'll do it. Look, hey, I wanted to really thank you guys and leadership team. 4 years ago, I think in 2017, we had no APIs, or we had very little, definitely nothing in Cantata and Sonata, and we've come a long way, and the assets are growing massively. We're doing a phenomenal job working to enable marketplace, the onboard interop platform. We have certification coming out. just, you know, SDKs, the dev guides, the support. We're just doing a phenomenal job. So I want to thank the leadership team and all the members who have contributed in the LSO committee to all the great work we've been doing. So I really want to wholeheartedly thank you. You guys are just awesome. So with that, I'll turn it back over. I believe it's now the test committee, the test and certification committee. So is that right, Kevin? Yes. Okay.
It is.
Thanks, Pascal.
Thanks, Pascal. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Pascal. Okay, welcome Test and Certification Committee co-chairs. My name is Kirby Russell. I've been working for the MEF for a long time. I won't go through my history. I'm here now. Okay, so we've got Devesh Gupta from PCW Global, Greg Spear from Exedian, and of course Kevin Vachon, who's MEF COO and also acting co-chair for this committee. We're going to rip through this, but we're going to give you some very concise, significant answers here. Kevin's first going to go through a brief overview of the Test and Certification Committee. So why don't you go get to it, Kevin?
Yeah, note the term, the title acting chair. So we're keen on someone else stepping up to come in and take over this position. Yeah, so, you know, this was, we used to be called the Certification Committee. And as the work kind of went beyond purely to support certification, we expanded it to be called the Test and Certification Committee over the past year. So there's really a couple of tracks of activities. One is that we developed the standards for testing and certification for MEF services, and you saw Isabel at the beginning of the plenary, who was the editor of MEF 91, the test document for Carrier Ethernet. So that was a product of this committee, and we have the standards track that underpin the testing and certification. But then we actually have to bring these programs to market. So if you want to bring a certification program to market, there's a whole set of activities to actually define what's going to be certified, who the test partner will be, what the pricing model has to be. You have to build it all out, test it, launch it, market it, and so on. So those are projects that we also have that are not standards based. And so those are in play today. And we're really looking at our first testing only oriented project, which Michael alluded to in the previous discussion. So we're looking at a testing service for onboarding and interop of LSO APIs, initially with Sonata and Cantata. Yeah, so there's a number of incubation groups, and so the objective this week is to progress those works. They're at different phases. Certainly, with respect to LSO Sonata, LSO API certification, initially focused on Sonata. We're well on our way. We've commenced a market assessment. We're doing the technical preparation work as well. We'll be hearing, Stan's doing the market assessment. We'll be hearing updates on what the service provider community has to say about the certification. Got a lot more to talk to there, so we'll be providing some interim. We'll provide some interim results. And now that market assessment is simultaneously looking at the onboarding and interop service. So we're going to the community saying we're looking at doing two different things here, how they fit together, and we're going to have to help that shape these programs. We're really kind of just getting started with, at least on the services and technology side, as 70.1 comes to fruition. Then there's an incubation group that's been formed to look at the next the next phase of certification. When I say just getting started, the 90.1 progress has been going. The test document that's been very well advanced, but we haven't completely shaped the go-to-market plan. So we'll be doing that as well. And also we have an incubation group in security, which is looking at all aspects of security and how that certification might be brought to market. Looking at MEF-88, Zero Trust, SASE, all the different piece parts, and how does that build on top of the SD-WAN work. And one thing that we're going to be looking at is and discussing is, how do we market this stuff? How can we improve our marketing? And we are injecting the certification requirements into the new MEF marketing plan, which will be discussed tomorrow, led by Lisa. Yeah, so we have two meetings. We meet in the morning, so we try to be as friendly as possible for APAC. We're closing at 1 on Wednesday, around 12 on Thursday. Could go a little bit longer. The detailed agenda is pretty firm, and it's there. So with that, Kirby, I'll turn it over to you for Q&A.
Great. Yeah, great. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, now to the panel.
Why don't you bounce down to item number 2 and talk to Greg?
Greg, let's
sort of stuff.
Yes, that's a good idea. So Greg, the second question, we'll go there first. So we have marketing on our agenda. So what do you think do you think MEF is effectively communicating the benefits of our certifications? And if not, what do you think should be our key focus of the discussions we're going to have this week in our meetings?
Well, I think so far, Kirby, it's been great. Just starting from Nan this morning, talking about people, talking about different vocabulary, how people communicate together, how the different standards are there. So I think from a marketing point of view, we've often focused on the technical greatness of the carrier Ethernet certification and all the other ones, but we really, I think, need to talk about onboarding and about interoperability, not only of APIs and stuff, of people, right? So when we have people coming in, being able to onboard them so they can communicate with each other and so forth. So I think the marketing has to go more now towards HR people, people that are team leaders that are bringing people in that need to have them communicate together. So I think we're going to be working on that this week, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that should be a good discussion. So Kevin, why don't we, well, there is obviously a tremendous amount of interest in SD-WAN. So what are we looking at in terms of the certifications for SD-WAN and the related security work? Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it quickly a couple of minutes ago. We have 70.1 that is being produced, 90.1. Spirent's leading that, doing a great job. So the testing document is coming along nicely. I think when we look at the program overall, we think we should have, we look at the current SD-WAN program, and as we shape the next phase, we think we should be able to have greater success or greater market penetration with the program. So as we look at moving into phase 2, we're stepping back saying, okay, what does the addressable market look like for this? So Stan is going to be coming into that research. What is the addressable market? What does the offering have to look like in terms of the price points, ease of delivery, and all aspects of delivery? How does it have to be marketed? Where are we in the market with MEF 70 adoption? Where will we be with 70.1? What does that mean to the success of the cert? So I think that's a big thing on that front. I think, with respect to the security piece, it's a challenge. Spirent has led that incubation group, and Pascal's been involved, and now we're bringing others into it. And I think there's some really well thought through plans as to how these piece parts fit together. The different aspects of security that MEF is working on. Is it one certification? Is it multiple certifications? And I think that there's going to be some good discussion on that. And I think that's tricky. I mean, I think that is very, very tricky. The work that MEF is doing is not too mature, so this program isn't coming to market right away. But that's, I think it's going to be essential that we follow the process here and we conduct the market assessments to really go out and find out, validate our assumptions, learn a lot more, shape the program around that. So that's kind of the two stages there. But, look, from a committee perspective, I think we've done a pretty good job putting more structure in place that's different from the other committees to actually, do the necessary preparation to bring these programs to market that are going to be successful.
I know
we're doing some things we've not done before.
I know we're getting pressed on time. I just want to add to that, on the professional certification side, we've created an incubation group to investigate further SD-WAN, what's going on with respect to the next version, what that's going to be in terms of a certification exam. MEF 70.1, MEF 88, MEF 105 are all part of that story. What ultimately ends up in a project plan that goes in front of the co-chairs. So that's some of our discussion this week. I do want to bring it back to Devesh one more time. Cross your fingers. Is radio there?
Yeah, there's no Devesh. I'm just going to come. I'll take that one for 1 minute, Kirby. I would encourage everybody to have a look at the agenda of the committee and come and visit us if you have the cycles not tied up. We are doing our best to differentiate, an onboarding and interop service versus a certification, and we position them within the overall life cycle of LSO Sonata, the adoption life cycle. So if a service provider has to go from I'm interested right through to production, what are the different stages? And then we try to align the different, tools that we have to help them get through the stage, whether they be white papers or. So onboarding and interop is really all about helping them develop get the initial testing done in-house with emulators, but also to be able to do testing against partner-specific implementations. So it's really about building and getting partner ready and being able to onboard with partners, whereas certification is validation against MEF standards, showing to the world that you're market ready, being in our registries, and so on and so forth. There's certainly some connections and overlaps there that we have to explain. Work in progress, but
and how should people come to us to get involved? Because we're always looking for more people. We've got great SMEs, subject matter experts out there that are engaging with me, and how can they get in touch with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're kind of a niche player within MEF right now. They can ping you, they can ping me, they can ping Greg, Devesh. Any of the staff, frankly, wants to get into anybody that touch base with any of the staff about participating. We'd be happy to kind of onboard you into activities and fit you in where it makes sense for you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you all for being part of this group. I'm sorry that Devesh couldn't add his significant contribution here, but we'll hopefully get that to you some way.
Good stuff. So I'm going to just try to accelerate my wrap up here now. Yeah. So a few quick announcements. Firstly, the closing plenary, is really a great opportunity to get a nice, tight, a fairly detailed technical, like a wrap up on everything that's gone on project by project. And those materials, it talks about what they've done, what decisions we're taking, outstanding issues, what's going on in the next quarter. And those materials are available for download. And I personally use them all the time to go back and to get readouts on what the committees are doing. I want to just quickly ask Tom to jump in here and talk about Teams rollout for MEF projects.
Yeah, so we're using Microsoft Teams. We're making a team for our members to facilitate collaboration and increase productivity outside of the normal 1 hour calls that you have during a project. It's open to all members. There's a channel for each project and incubation group. You can configure your notifications so that only the channels that you're interested will notify you. You'll get notifications whether or not you're logged in. And it's available either in your browser or via an app. We recommend the browser if you're using Teams internally at your company. You can email me at mef.net, tom@mef.net to get set up. You can also visit mef.net/teams for documentation, and we'll be increasing that with tutorials, etc. The goal is to get our communication for the membership working on these projects off of email and into Teams so that it's open and accessible to everyone.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So your point on this, and the staff has exponentially increased our use of Teams for projects. We're extending out to third parties and so on. It's working out pretty well. It takes a little while to get things working well in terms of the file storage, and then we have to work it back into the wiki as well. So there's a little bit of work to do here, but we got to keep moving on it. I want to just touch on some kind of major activities in the next quarter around the leadership front. We have our annual call for co-chairs. It's going out next month on the 20th, because as many of you know, we basically hold a competition now every year. We obviously have a lot of the existing chairs that reapply, and we usually have new candidates as well. So we're keen to see some new people step up here and come into the fold. So keep an eye on that one. You've got a couple of weeks, 2.5 or so weeks to look at that. And then we announce things in early July, so we have the opportunity to have new chairs, if there are new chairs in place for the annual meeting. We're going to have online elections for the board for the second year in a row, and we do a call for candidates on the 9th, and then there's a series of dates after that you see there, where and then we announce the new board at the annual meeting. We actually have a date. We have a couple of date errors here because the annual meeting's not on the 26th. Alicia and I need to fix our slides here, so it's actually the week before. So, but anyway, you'll see updated timelines that are correct in the notice going out to members. With respect to the quarterly meetings, we're obviously in this sort of transition mode now, where 19th to 22nd of July is our next one. we had the poll. Let me just open that poll for a sec here. Earlier, and about 37% said they would like to attend if continues to improve. About 40% said nah, it's unlikely to get travel. Some said absolutely they would attend. Some said they wouldn't attend. I think the net is we'll see where we go. We'll have a discussion on this on Friday with the board, as we always do, and we'll either make a decision then, or we will push it out a little bit and make a decision. The net is that if it's hybrid, we're going to make sure that those coming in remotely are well looked after and the overall experience is appropriate. So we're investigating different hybrid meeting techniques and so on and so forth. Again, we're still in hold mode for the fall. We tentatively would like to be hosted by Orange and just coincidentally, the color there is orange actually. At the last week of October, and hopefully we can make that happen. As things evolve here. Certainly by the time we get to July, the next two meetings should be much more stable in terms of face-to-face / hybrid formats and locations. A quick reminder that we've had 4 Infinite Edge series now. There's a lot of great content. I was in that little recording earlier, but just put in your calendars that the next episode is on the 12th of May. And of course, if you can't make it live, then the recording, the content is recorded, I should say. And just another reminder as well, we've had with the Pocs, we talked about the 7 Pocs that were showcased in the last quarter in February. The downloads are very, very substantial for these Pocs, and they're just great representations of MEF's work, more enabling more holistic, use cases and so on and solutions. So please go to MEF.net and, download those Pocs one at a time and have a look at them. There's also something new that we're doing, which was kind of driven out of one of the Pocs, which is a new webinar. It's a little bit of a different webinar. It's around retail. How Edge AI services benefit the retail sector. So we're sort of looking at the work that we're doing and saying, how can we start to maybe make this work, better understand the sort of appetite for a particular, enterprise sector. What's the response from that sector, for this work? So this use case obviously is MEF work and where we play in enabling certain services around the edge. So it's a bit of a test for us. So I highly encourage you to jump into that. We also we're seeing the stands start to solidify with commercial events. Obviously, that business over the last year has been very unstable with all sorts of events going virtual. Then they're being moved around. There's still a lot of that going on. ITW, for example, was recently moved to September. But I think we're going to see things firm up, and we have some pre-recorded sessions today at Capacity LATAM. This morning I hosted a panel before doing this with Telecom Review, targeted in the Middle East. We've got a conference on SASE, ITW. This calendar is going to firm up over the fall and into next year. And we have also, just to close out here, Lisa, as part of her marketing activities, is kind of revamping our forms of member communications. And you can see a few examples here. She'll be pushing out a meeting recap, probably some links to some of the content here, quarterly meeting recap, a digest of upcoming events, and also something which I thought was pretty cool was the blog digest, where we have a lot of activity in the blog, but pushing it out to the members that they can see what's in the blog. No slide here, but I would encourage you to participate in the survey, which you will get by email a little bit later. So I know I'm rushing through the last piece here. We're about a few minutes over the top of the hour. We had sort of a 3-hour window we'd like to stick with, but we appreciate your patience as we work through this format for the first time. We certainly want to get your feedback in the survey as to whether you like the plenary and any suggestions you have for improvement. And with that, I hope that you all can contribute this week, and you have a very productive week with your time. And thank you for attending. Take care.